The coffee was still warm when Mark Whittaker vanished from the lakeside community of Thomasville, Georgia, population 11,203. The winter morning of December 18, 2004, arrived with thick fog and a cold wind blowing off Lake Seminole into the small neighborhood where he lived. At 6:12 a.m., Pock's neighbor, Clifford Darnell, waved through the window as the 31-year-old carried his shotgun and duck decoy box across the frost-covered lawn toward the pickup parked out front. He said he'd be back before lunch, like every other hunting trip. Darnell stood quietly watching Mark's figure fade into the silver fog, the sound of the truck's engine growing faint against the wind whistling through the pines. What happened in the hours that followed would keep all of Thomas County from ever truly sleeping again. Before we dive deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the latest cases. Winter 2004, Southwest Georgia was wrapped in the damp chill of the days just before Christmas. Fog lay thick over Lake Seminole. The pale early light barely revealed a few meters of water ahead of a boat's bow. Pines along the shore rustled in the wind, and the low grass banks were soaked with moisture. It was duck season, and Lake Seminole, fed by branches of the Chattahoochee, was a familiar destination. On the outskirts of Thomasville, Mark Whittaker, 31, a real estate appraiser, was getting ready for his annual hunt. He lived with his wife Diane and their young daughter. To the neighbors, he was a quiet, tidy guy who loved his job and was passionate about hunting, especially duck hunting every winter. Before leaving the house, Mark checked his gear as always: the old Browning shotgun, brown jacket, rubber boots, decoy box, and a life jacket tossed on the back seat. Diane stood in the doorway in her robe, watching him pull the small boat to the truck. It was still dark. The red pickup's taillights swept across the foggy road. The engine noise faded into the early morning silence. That was the last time she ever saw her husband. When the sun came up and the fog thinned into a hazy layer hovering over the lake, other hunters started heading back in. By late morning, Diane still hadn't seen Mark. She made coffee, turned on the TV, then kept looking out at the empty yard, hoping to hear the familiar engine. The phone never rang. When she called Mark's cell, it went straight to no signal. At first, she thought he might have stayed out longer to hunt, but by early afternoon, the unease was unmistakable. Diane called Ryan Fletcher, Mark's best friend, to ask if he knew where Mark was. Ryan said no, and suggested Mark was probably still on the lake with bad reception. She waited another hour, then called two more friends from last year's hunting group. No one had seen him. No one had seen his truck in the area. By dusk, Diane knew something was wrong. For the first time she felt an emptiness spread through the house, a house where her husband's footsteps usually echoed every afternoon. She picked up the landline and dialed the Thomas County Sheriff's Office emergency number. On the other end, the night dispatcher's calm professional voice answered, "Thomas County Sheriff's Office, what is your emergency?" Diane took a deep breath, her voice catching. "My husband, Mark Whittaker, went duck hunting on Lake Seminole this morning. He hasn't come home. I haven't been able to reach him all day." The dispatcher quickly logged the call, confirmed the time and search area, and immediately passed the information up the chain. The report was officially opened in the system just before 8 p.m. All details from Diane Whittaker's call were forwarded to Captain Raymond Carter, head of the Rapid Response Unit. That night, as thick fog blanketed the Lake Seminole shoreline, Carter deployed 3 patrol units and a rescue truck to the south boat ramp, the spot Mark usually launched from. Radios crackled non-stop. Headlights swept the dirt road down to the water. When the first team arrived, Mark's silver pickup was found parked right by the ramp, doors locked, windows coated in heavy frost. An officer shined a flashlight inside, toolbox in the bed, coiled anchor rope, spare fuel can, and a few old spent shells. Carter ordered the area sealed off and called in the local rescue unit from Bainbridge for support. Near midnight, a temporary command post was set up in an old storage shed off County Road 271, close enough to keep eyes on the lake. Everything was logged under the protocol missing adult water incident, high priority. The night grew colder, By early the next morning, the official search began. 2 lightweight patrol boats headed north from the ramp, each equipped with side-scan sonar. A third rescue team launched a drone to scan from above for anything floating. A dive team with tanks stood ready to sweep the shallows. At 8 a.m., police lights still glowed yellow on the foggy water, breath turning to white clouds. Inside the command trailer, Carter watched the sonar feed, curved lines reflecting objects on the lake bottom. After nearly 2 hours, sonar picked up a long object about 2.5 meters, drifting slowly in less than 2 meters of water. A boat was sent to investigate. As they closed in, they saw it was Mark's small silver aluminum John boat, registration matching his name. The boat was drifting freely, starboard side brushing through the reeds, bottom barely muddy. Officers secured a line, used a hand winch to pull it ashore, and began processing. Inside the 12-gauge Browning shotgun lying along the port gunwale, 2 decoy boxes, an orange life jacket, and a few unfired shells. No collision damage, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Forensic techs sealed the evidence, photographed everything, and marked the GPS location. Initial data was sent immediately to the GBI lab for later analysis. Divers went down around the recovery site, water biting cold, thick mud, visibility under 1 meter. They searched in a fan pattern within a 20-meter radius and found nothing but rotten branches. Meanwhile, sonar expanded southwest while the drone recorded overhead footage of the shoreline. On land, another team examined the ramp access. Tire tracks were clear in the damp dirt, matching Mark's truck perfectly. A few boot prints were visible, but mixed with older ones, hard to date. Diane was brought to the scene to identify property. She confirmed everything was her husband's and said Mark always kept his boat spotless and never left gear scattered. Officers noted that because the boat was almost clean of mud, odd for someone who regularly hunted shallow, reedy areas. That afternoon, rescue teams pushed the search radius another mile out. They placed red marker buoys for swept areas and drew a grid map on the command center whiteboard. The wind shifted from north to west, creating small waves that made sonar work harder. One sonar tech reported no large biological movement, no human-sized objects in the scan area. Carter logged it and ordered the search to continue until dark. By 6 p.m., teams pulled back to shore. The boat, life jacket, shotgun, and decoys were bagged, sealed, and shipped to GBI Atlanta for prints, DNA, and mud analysis. The preliminary scene report read, no indications of criminal activity, no signs of violence, drifting boat and disappearance, possibly accidental. But in the technical notes, Carter added a final line. Boat drift direction inconsistent with morning wind, requires further verification. When night fell, only patrol vehicle lights reflected off the black water. The official search moved into day 2, expanding to the entire west shore of Lake Seminole, with one goal: locate the last trace of Mark Whittaker. On the morning of the 3rd day after the missing person report was filed, the GBI crime scene unit returned for detailed shoreline processing along Lake Seminole. The weather was drier. Fog lifted quickly, and mud along the bank had hardened, perfect for photos and sampling. Investigator Harold Mitchell and the forensics team followed the trail to the south ramp, where Mark's pickup was found. The ramp was still cordoned off with caution tape. Inside, 2 clear sets of tire tracks backed right to the water's edge. Tread pattern, wheelbase, and depth were measured and compared to the truck, perfect match. Behind the truck, a slight depression showed the boat had been manually slid down before launch. The team collected 3 soil samples from the launch site and 3 more from where the boat was recovered for particle comparison. Under the thin mud layer near the bank, they found several shallow boot prints, size roughly 10-11, aggressive lug sole pattern, typical of hunting rubber boots. One smaller print overlapped the edge, pointing back toward the lake, but water had blurred it beyond recognition. Mitchell ordered photos and plaster casts of the 2 clearest prints. After measurements, he had GPS coordinates plotted and connected to the tire tracks and ramp. The scene map showed a straight path from truck to water, no detours or side trails. That proved Mark launched the boat alone, or if someone was with him, they left no clear tracks. The team continued west along the shore to where the boat was found. The soil there was different, sandy yellow clay, not the thick black mud of the launch ramp. Samples taken where the boat had grounded showed significant compositional differences when compared to mud on the boat's hull. Mitchell saw it matched the western shore soil, not the launch site. That note was flagged inconsistency, soil match variance. They also reviewed wind and current data for the morning in question. Bainbridge weather station records showed wind from the north pushing south at about 7 mph. Anything drifting should have moved south or southeast. Yet the boat was recovered on the southwest shore, opposite the wind and current. A tech ran a hydrodynamic simulation of natural drift. The modeled path could not reach the actual recovery location. The scene report stated clearly, drift direction inconsistent with actual weather conditions, possible human intervention. They also noted the anchor rope in the boat was still coiled and undamaged. If Mark had anchored mid-lake and fallen out, the boat would have drifted from that point, but the rope had never been deployed. That undermined the boat drifted away theory. Mitchell had techs examine bottom mud, thin layer only, meaning the boat had either just been launched or moved very little. Another officer checked nearby vegetation, broken reeds, scrape marks in the grass, small slide marks on the bank. The slide marks ran from shore to water, shallow, consistent with pushing a boat out, not dragging a person. Everything was photographed and sealed. By noon, the forensics team completed a scene map with 8 marked points: truck location, boot prints, slide marks, boat recovery, wind direction, soil sample sites, and control areas. Mitchell reviewed the diagram and saw the movement lines didn't fit an accident. Distance from launch to recovery was just over 3/4 of a mile, yet wind blew the opposite way. A light aluminum boat drifting naturally would follow the wind, it could not go against it. That contradiction was labeled anomalous, requires further investigation. By late afternoon, the team returned to command. Soil samples, plaster casts, and drift simulations were sealed and sent to the GBI lab in Atlanta. The interim summary report read, tire tracks match Mark Whittaker's vehicle. No struggle evidence at ramp. Boot prints consistent with victim size. Boat drift contradicts natural winds current. Preliminary conclusion. High probability of human intervention in boat placement. Mitchell closed the day's file, marking it open investigation, ground and water examination. Ongoing, the sun set, the last golden light, reflecting off the quiet lake. The entire area was posted no access, pending lab results and scientific analysis of the drift-wind discrepancy, the small detail that might prove to be the key to what really happened on the cold waters of Lake Seminole that morning. The next day, the search expanded into the deeper parts of the lake. A professional GBI dive team was brought in from Tallahassee, arriving at Seminole before dawn. 6 divers, 2 sonar techs, and 1 data recorder. They coordinated with Captain Carter's unit and divided the lake into 3 priority zones based on Mitchell's map. Zone A, near the south ramp with the tire tracks. Zone B, mid-lake, average depth 12 feet. Zone C, the southwest shore where the boat was found. Each zone was marked with GPS buoys, handheld sonar, and boat-mounted scanners were recalibrated to sweep from bottom mud to surface. Morning wind was light, water shimmering silver gray. Divers wore full dry suits, heavy tanks, tethered to the mother boat by comms lines. At 8 a.m., Team 1 began sweeping Zone A in a fan pattern, 3-meter spacing. Underwater visibility was maybe 1.5 meters. Thick mud and slight current forced slow movement. After 40 minutes they surfaced with small items: a rusty bottle cap, broken plastic, and an old brass 12-gauge shell. The shell matched the type mark used. Mitchell ordered it preserved in place, GPS logged, and marked on the map. Team 2 moved to Zone B, the central deeper area where sonar had shown scattered logs. Continuous scans displayed cylindrical returns the size of tree trunks. Divers checked each one, mostly roots or sunken branches. One diver reported a small soft gray object stuck in the mud. When retrieved, it was a thick piece of fabric, apparently torn from a waterproof jacket. The fabric was sealed in an evidence bag. Preliminary exam showed synthetic fibers consistent with hunting outerwear. The area around that find was expanded 20 meters, no further items. By noon, teams took a short shore break, then moved to Zone C, the primary focus. Dual sonar ran cross patterns, mapping a bottom of deep mud, scattered branches, and small depressions. Divers took turns probing each depression with poles. Every pole brought only clay and reed roots. Water temperature 10 degrees Celsius, continuous 3-hour dives left many divers stiff and numb. Visibility near zero, everything done by feel and comms guidance. By late afternoon, the dive commander reported no body or human-sized object found in any of the 3 zones. 3D sonar exports showed no anomalies beneath the mud, to a depth of 18 feet. The few recovered items, fabric scrap, spent shell, plastic pieces, were sealed and sent to the GBI forensics lab for DNA, chemical, and wear analysis. A scene summary was written at command. 12 total dive hours, 3 zones, nearly 10 square miles scanned. Mitchell read every line before signing, adding a final note: no body or human-sized object located. Recovered evidence insufficient to confirm criminal indicators. Captain Carter finalized the report, attached sonar images and bottom maps, and sent everything to headquarters. Sunset spread across the water. Thin fog returned as temperatures dropped. Rescue boats were hauled out, tanks lined up in rows. The dive team packed gear and left in silence, leaving behind a calm lake that still offered no clear answer to how a duck hunter on a Saturday morning had simply vanished. After the dive team concluded the first search wave, without discovering additional traces, all collected physical evidence, including Mark Whittaker's aluminum boat, the Browning shotgun, life jacket, duck decoy box, fabric scraps, and spent shells, was transported to the GBI's Forensic Technical Laboratory in Atlanta for detailed examination. The examination process was opened the same day, handled jointly by the Crime Scene Forensics Unit and the Trace Evidence and Biological Materials Section. The boat was brought into Examination Bay 3, its exterior surfaces washed with a neutral solution to collect adhering mud and water samples. Technicians used visible spectrum and ultraviolet light to search for blood traces or biological material. Results were negative across the entire hull. No blood stains, bodily fluids, or foreign fabric fibers were found beyond natural mud and a few decaying organic fragments from reeds. The handles, gunwales, and seats were dusted for fingerprints. Analysis revealed multiple clear prints belonging to Mark Whittaker, consistent with records on file. However, among the collected samples, 2 distinct fingerprints were identified as belonging to Ryan Fletcher through state database comparison. This information was immediately added to the official report. When re-interviewed, Diane confirmed that Ryan had previously gone hunting with Mark, but could not pinpoint the last time he had touched the boat. An internal report noted, fingerprints have no probative value for establishing time of contact. The boat's surface showed an uneven thin layer of mud. pH and mineral analysis of the mud adhering to the hull bottom indicated it dried quickly with low water content, proving the boat had been submerged for only a short period. Estimated under 12 hours, inconsistent with the multi-day disappearance timeline. This result was deemed anomalous. Materials experts also noted light oxidation on the hull, primarily from moisture and air exposure, with no characteristic corrosion from prolonged submersion. There was no accumulated mud residue on the floor. Under natural drifting conditions on the lake for 24 hours or more, mud and sediment typically collect heavily in the stern corners. The report concluded, current surface condition is incompatible with prolonged immersion environment. High probability the boat was placed in the water shortly before discovery. The Browning shotgun was examined separately. The barrel was clean, no recent firing residue, surface completely dry. The 2 duck decoy boxes remained sealed, no tears or scratches. The orange life jacket was dry, with only minor mud along the edges. Under microscopy, the mud particles matched soil from the west shore area where the boat was recovered, not the black mud type from the southern boat ramp. This detail aligned with Mitchell's earlier observation of geological discrepancy between the two zones. In an internal memo, the lead technician wrote, "Evidence does not reflect natural conditions of a prolonged accident. Items may have been staged." GBI also conducted a float test, placing the boat in a simulation tank to check stability. Results showed the boat drifted slightly left when unloaded, but actual wind direction on the lake that morning would have pushed it south, not southwest where it was found. Data was entered into the system for later modeling. Additionally, organic analysts on the gunwale found only a thin layer of algae and dirt, no older algae or sludge layer, abnormal if the boat had floated on open water for more than a day. Compiling all findings, the 22-page forensic report concluded, no human blood, no foreign material, short immersion duration. Mud composition inconsistent with launch point. Ryan Fletcher fingerprints present on handles. The results were forwarded to lead investigator Harold Mitchell and Captain Carter for preliminary review. During an internal meeting in Bainbridge, Mitchell wrote in the final evaluation section, "Initial scene exhibits signs of staging. Physical data from the boat and items incompatible with actual field conditions and disappearance timeline." He ordered all evidence held in GBI Atlanta storage and requested the full report be sent to the district attorney's office for filing. As night fell, the laboratory grew silent, only white light spilling across rows of stainless steel cabinets holding mud samples. The life jacket, the shotgun, and spectral photographs of the hull, the sole remaining physical evidence of the man who vanished on Lake Seminole, and the first data point suggesting the accident scene might not have been entirely natural. After the evidence examination report was returned, GBI shifted to communication data analysis to cross-reference timelines and locations of involved parties. The Digital Forensics Unit at the Atlanta headquarters received requests to pull call records for 3 phone numbers: Mark Whittaker, Diane Whittaker, and Ryan Fletcher. The goal was to reconstruct the communication sequence in the 48 hours before Mark was reported missing. Verizon provided records including call lists, text messages, cell tower IDs, and location coordinates at connection times. Preliminary analysis showed Mark's phone functioned normally until the morning of December 18, 2004, then lost signal at 9:15 a.m. Prior to that, he made 7 outgoing calls, 3 the previous evening to clients. 2 short calls to his wife, 1 call lasting under a minute at 5:17 a.m. to Ryan. BTN call from Ryan at 5:24 a.m. Location data placed Mark's outgoing call within coverage of Tower 214 in Bainbridge, approximately 3.2 miles from the southern Lake Seminole boat ramp, confirming he was en route, or already near the lake, when he spoke with Ryan. Diane's records showed 4 calls to Mark that day, starting at 10:12 a.m., all unsuccessful. No unusual activity from her phone aside from later emergency calls to the sheriff's office. Ryan Fletcher's data drew the most attention. Between 5 o'clock and 6 a.m., his phone connected to 3 different towers: Tower 219 on the eastern lake edge, Tower 214 same as Mark, and Tower 221 south of the lake. Switching between 3 coverage areas in a short window suggested the device moved around the lake rather than remaining at home, as he had stated. Technicians used CellMapper software to plot an estimated travel route, an arc along the eastern shore down toward the southwest sector, coinciding with the eventual boat recovery location. The 5:17 a.m. call from Mark lasted 42 seconds with stable signal strength, meaning both phones were in strong coverage near shore areas. Ryan's phone then went off network for 22 minutes, reappearing on Tower 221 at 5:45 a.m. This matched weather reports, indicating dawn was still dim with few people on the water. Raw GPS coordinates, extracted from the device, showed a network access point at 5:40 a.m. near Car Landing Road, a side road leading to the lake from the west. This was the first evidence placing Ryan Fletcher near the lake during the window. Mark lost contact. A summary was attached to the file. Ryan Fletcher mobile device present in Tower 214 and 221 coverage, 5:17, 5:45 a.m. Overlapping Mark Whittaker activity zone. Mitchell noted, contradicts witness Fletcher's statement, requires re-interview. Additionally, technicians discovered an unread text from Ryan to Diane at 4:58 a.m. reading, simply, "Has Mark left yet?" Diane never replied. The message was marked read after 9 p.m. that night, while she was with police. The message was printed and added to the electronic evidence file. After 6 a.m., Ryan's phone left lake coverage and switched to Tower 232 in Bainbridge, remaining fixed near High Point Drive, his home address, by 7:30 a.m. However, the rapid tower hopping in just over an hour was deemed not reasonable if he had truly stayed home. Technicians confirmed stable signals with no positioning errors. Mitchell compiled everything into a timeline. 4:58 text to Diane, 5:17 call between Mark and Ryan, 5:24 missed call from Ryan, 5:40 Ryan device, reconnects near Car Landing Road, 6:15 Mark signal fades, 9:15 total loss. Mark's final tower was also 214, same sector as the two calls with Ryan. Mitchell marked the last ping in red on the map. By day's end, the technical report went to the GBI commander with a provisional conclusion. Phone data places Mark Whittaker and Ryan Fletcher devices together in the Lake Seminole area on the morning of December 18, 2004. Call sequence and coverage contradict Fletcher's prior statement. No evidence of technical tampering or spoofing. Conclusion: suspicious element exists in Ryan Fletcher's movement timeline. Mitchell signed off, tagged it potential lead. Verify by interview, and updated the investigation file, marking a major step in expanding scrutiny to direct contacts at the exact moment Mark disappeared. With phone data showing overlapping locations between Mark and Ryan around Lake Seminole, investigator Harold Mitchell ordered the first round of formal recorded interviews with all directly involved parties to verify prior statements and timelines. Interviews took place at the GBI Bainbridge branch office on the Friday following Mark's disappearance. Diane Whittaker arrived first, on time, but visibly exhausted yet composed. Mitchell started with basics when Mark left home, who knew his hunting plans that morning, and their final conversation. Diane stated Mark hunted alone, a years-long habit. He liked early starts to catch the first duck flight and always prepped everything himself. She couldn't recall his exact clothing beyond a brown jacket and rubber boots and insisted no one accompanied him. When asked who knew his plans, she named Ryan Fletcher, saying they talked on the phone last night. But only about work and hunting in general, no meetup arranged. Mitchell pressed for call times. Diane said she didn't remember exactly. Mark usually checked gear before bed. Recording captured, he went alone. I'm certain of that. Ryan Fletcher was next. He arrived confident, wearing a dress shirt and bringing insurance paperwork to prove he was busy that morning. When Mitchell raised the phone location data, Ryan claimed he never left Bainbridge and suggested possible signal bounce or coverage overlap. He admitted speaking with Mark the previous evening, but insisted it was only about weather and duck hunting generally. Mitchell asked specifically, "Do you know which part of the lake Mark planned to hunt?" Ryan answered, "I think he mentioned the South Shore, the old Reed area." He denied any involvement that morning, saying the phone must have logged wrong. The response was noted as contradicts location data. Regarding his relationship with the Whittaker family, Ryan said they were longtime friends, graduated together, hunted often, and he sometimes helped Mark repair the boat. Mitchell then re-interviewed two local residents who gave initial statements. Curtis Grant, a fisherman living near the West Shore, confirmed hearing a gunshot very early, not fully light yet, around 6:30. Duck hunters normally start shooting after official sunrise, about 7:15. Asked if he saw any boats, Grant recalled a small light moving slowly in the center, but couldn't identify anyone. Another witness couple, Ernest and Linda Pope, staying at a lakeside cabin, reported hearing two loud bangs minutes apart that morning, thinking fireworks or hunting shots. Linda looked out, but saw only thick fog. Mitchell noted, gunshots confirmed by two independent sources earlier than normal hunting start time. He requested technical review of weather and echo data for possible sound reflection from a 12-gauge weapon, Mark's usual type. That afternoon, Mitchell met again with gas station clerk Carol Webb, who had seen Mark that morning. She confirmed, he came alone, bought coffee, seemed in a hurry. I remember because he left his change. Time, around 5:30 or a little after, still dark. Thus, gas station sighting, call logs, and witness statements aligned on Mark's lake arrival time but contradicted Ryan's claim of no planned meetup. When Mitchell laid out the timeline for Ryan, he grew flustered, repeating possible carrier error or his phone auto-connecting while driving past the area. Mitchell observed voice changes and eye avoidance. Transcript noted, unsteady demeanor, defensive posture. That evening, GBI compiled all statements into a comparison chart. Diane insisted Mark went alone. Ryan admitted talking but denied plans to meet. Independent witnesses confirmed early gunshots and a boat light at dawn. Phone data proved both devices present around the lake simultaneously. Final notes in the first-round interview report stated, clear discrepancy exists between Ryan Fletcher's statements and objective carrier data, as well as witness-confirmed shot timing. Further verification required regarding behavior, location, and timeline alignment of involved parties. Mitchell signed, tagged the file active discrepancy, and closed the 7th workday since the man was officially recorded missing. After completing the first round of interviews, the GBI opened a new investigative direction related to the victim's finances and those directly connected to him. Following standard procedure for prolonged missing person cases with unclear causes, the Financial Economic Division of GBI Atlanta was tasked with reviewing all bank accounts, credit records, assets, and insurance contracts of Mark Whittaker. The report from First Georgia Bank showed that Mark's account maintained a stable balance of approximately $45,000, with no unusual withdrawals in the most recent 3 months. Regular expenses consisted mainly of mortgage payments, his daughter's tuition, and fuel costs. However, when examining the personal insurance portfolio, the investigative team discovered 3 life insurance policies with a combined value of $1.80 million, a figure far exceeding Mark's average income. The first 2 policies, signed 4 years apart, were issued by Southern Mutual and Patriot Life, each valued at $250,000, and both listed his wife, Diane Whittaker, as the sole beneficiary. The third policy, far more noteworthy, had been signed only 6 months before the disappearance, valued at $1.3 million, issued by North Shore Financial, with Ryan Fletcher acting as the broker. The contract file contained Mark Whittaker's signature, a witness signature, and the salesperson's signature. When cross-referencing the signing date with bank transaction records, technicians confirmed that the initial premium payment was transferred from Mark's account to the company's account through the Bainbridge branch, executed by Ryan Fletcher in his capacity as broker. The financial report noted that this policy included a clause paying the full face value in the event of accidental death. Effective date July 1, 2004. Thus, the policy had been issued just over 5 months before the disappearance. Mitchell directed the Economic Investigation Unit to clarify the motive behind this unusually high-value policy. According to prior statements, Mark was cautious and frugal, rarely taking out large insurance policies. GBI financial officers continued tracing the source of the premium payments and discovered that 3 transfer documents were not initiated from Mark's personal computer, but from an IP address registered to the North Shore office where Ryan worked. When checking the company's electronic storage system, the electronic contract record showed that Fletcher's login was used to download and print the document, with timestamps matching the signing date. In the notes section, the client confirmation field contained only a scanned signature. For comparison, GBI collected Mark's signature samples from bank records and official documents and performed a forensic handwriting comparison. Preliminary results showed approximately 70% similarity, not sufficient to confirm forgery, but with noticeable differences in the initial MA. The report was sent internally to Mitchell with the comment, "Possibility of mechanical copying or proxy signing cannot be ruled out." Beyond the life insurance policies, investigators also found that Diane was the sole beneficiary on all three policies, with no contingent beneficiaries, and the third policy explicitly stated payment would be made within 60 days of receiving a valid death certificate. When brought in for questioning, Diane confirmed knowledge of the two older policies but denied any awareness of the third, stating, "Mark bought it himself. I didn't know." Mitchell recorded the statement and had Diane sign the interview transcript. At the same time, the financial unit examined the Whittaker family's tax records. The 2003 return showed gross income of approximately $92,000, providing no justification for nearly $2 million in life insurance. An internal report noted, "Assets and income inconsistent with insurance value." A review of Mark's bank transactions in the 6 months prior to his disappearance revealed a $12,500 transfer to North Shore Financial, matching the first premium on the new policy. GBI confirmed the transfer was executed at the Bainbridge branch by a male matching Ryan Fletcher's description. Reviewing the entire file, Mitchell noted in his report, 3 life insurance policies totaling $1.8 million, sole beneficiary, Diane Whittaker, policy seller Ryan Fletcher, victim's close friend. These details were submitted to the head of the Economic Investigation Division with a recommendation to classify the case as containing potential financial motive. The financial report further revealed that just 2 days after Mark was reported missing, a call from Diane's phone was made to the North Shore branch inquiring about procedures for filing a missing person claim. Company staff noted, "Customer asked about process but has not submitted a claim." GBI considered this note significant. All related documents were sealed, including hard copies of contracts, payment receipts, electronic data, and beneficiary verification records. In the final summary report, Mitchell wrote, "Financial evidence indicates the victim held unusually high-value insurance relative to income. The policy seller is a close friend and directly connected individual in the disappearance. The sole beneficiary is the victim's wife. Financial motive is noted. Further analysis of the relationship between personal ties and material gain following the disappearance is required." This 28-page report marked a pivotal shift in the Whittaker case file, moving the focus from a possible on-water accident to the possibility of an underlying economic motive. After more than 6 weeks, the official GBI search operation at Lake Seminole concluded on day 44 after Mark Whittaker was reported missing. During that period, over 50 personnel from the Thomas County Sheriff's Office, Bainbridge Rescue Team, and GBI support units rotated through surface searches, sonar sweeps, deep dives, and shoreline checks. The final summary recorded nearly 120 hours of diving, 70 square miles scanned, and 23 objects recovered, but no evidence located the body or provided direct proof of the victim's fate. Weather during the search was highly variable. Cold winds and light rain reduced sonar visibility, and thick lake bottom mud hindered detection. Teams were gradually pulled back to command as the search expanded downstream, yet results remained negative. Captain Carter's field report stated, "No objects of human size detected, no new personal items recovered. The scene is considered fully covered for the area where the victim likely entered the water." Meanwhile, the GBI Atlanta Technical Lab completed final analysis of mud, fabric, and shotgun shell samples, all negative for human DNA or blood traces. The fabric fragment found underwater was part of a common hunting jacket, insufficient to link to the victim. The heavily corroded 12-gauge shell could not be dated. The hydroforensic unit re-examined wind, current, and drift patterns. The scientific report concluded that if Mark had fallen in the middle of the lake, the body would surface within 5 to 7 days unless trapped in deep mud or damaged by wildlife. Yet after more than a month, no body surfaced and no suspicious floating objects appeared. GBI noted, probability of victim deceased with body retained in mud is low. At the Bainbridge office, investigator Harold Mitchell compiled all data, statements, evidence analysis, phone records, and financial review for the search phase summary. He concluded, no body, no direct evidence of crime. All physical traces suggest the victim may have suffered a hunting accident. This remark was quoted in GBI's official preliminary case assessment. Local media reported the end of the search, describing the disappearance as a tragic hunting accident. A January 29, 2005, article in the Thomasville Chronicle quoted police. No evidence of foul play. Lake Seminole is known as treacherous water, with extensive reeds and sinking mud. Public opinion gradually accepted the theory that Mark Whittaker fell from his boat, was unable to react, and was swept away by the current. The family was advised to prepare administrative procedures for a prolonged missing person case. For investigators, the file was administratively closed. The case code was changed to inactive, missing person, meaning active investigation was suspended due to lack of new leads. GBI stored all evidence in Vault 4 in Atlanta, including the boat, shotgun, life jacket, and search maps. In the final report, Mitchell added a private note, certain scene elements and positioning data remain unexplained, but insufficient grounds exist to open a criminal file. The comment was marked in red ink, indicating the case could be reconsidered if new developments arose. On February 2, 2005, the regional GBI director signed the official document terminating the Lake Seminole search. Rescue teams removed equipment, the scene perimeter was lifted, and the public was again permitted to fish and hunt. On the lake, the last sonar marker buoys were collected, leaving only a few bare wooden stakes. For authorities, the case was closed. For the Whittaker family, that silence meant nothing left to hold on to except a cold entry in the archives. Victim missing, presumed hunting accident, body not recovered. GBI closed the nearly 300-page file and placed it in the 2005 storage archive, awaiting a day when the numbers, maps, and dry reports might reveal something previously unseen. Once the final report was signed and the search terminated, Mark Whittaker's disappearance quickly faded into administrative obscurity. Spring 2005 passed, the last marker buoys were removed from Lake Seminole. The boat ramp reopened to locals, and fresh silt from tributary rivers covered the traces that once stirred all of Thomas County. The Whittaker family quietly returned to daily life without a body or funeral. Diane moved closer to her parents in Bainbridge and sold the old house after a few months. Local papers occasionally mentioned the case as the sad story of an experienced hunter meeting a winter accident. Mark's name appeared briefly in GBI's annual statistics, missing, inactive file. The 300-page physical file was moved to Vault 4 at GBI Atlanta headquarters. Shelved alongside hundreds of other unsolved missing person cases, each reduced to a case number, a few notes, and sealed forensic evidence bags. In the first years after investigation ceased, no new information was added. Georgia's periodic missing person reports listed the Whittaker case only as one with no signs of criminality, no additional witnesses, and no recovered body. Internally at GBI, it was treated as a closed water incident, a fully documented on-water accident. From 2006 to 2010, no requests to reopen or petitions from relatives were received. Diane ceased all contact with the Thomas County Sheriff's Office and never asked for file excerpts. Search participants moved on to other assignments. Most regarded the Whittaker case as one of many unsolved disappearances they had to accept. In 2008, the NCIC database was updated and automatically changed the case status to inactive. 10-year retention, meaning without new evidence, the file would be retained only until 2015, before possible removal from active listings. Evidence items, boat, shotgun, life jacket and fabric fragment remained in cold storage with periodic checks, but no further testing requests. The 2010 inventory log noted, evidence in stable condition, never accessed since sealing. Meanwhile, missing person cases in southwest Georgia continued to rise, pushing the Whittaker file further into obscurity in statewide summaries. Only a dry data line remained: male, white, 31, missing since 2004, presumed drowned. Over the decade, Lake Seminole continued to be mentioned locally for minor accidents, but Mark's name was rarely spoken except by a few older search volunteers who recounted the story to anglers as an old tale. In 2013, when GBI digitized records, the Whittaker file was scanned and converted to PDF for internal servers. Archivist Paul Danner reviewed every page, applied new barcodes, and commented, "No new physical evidence, no new witnesses, no investigative activity. Everything proceeded as expected for a dead file, sealed in cold metal cabinets." Outside the agency, the case was virtually forgotten. Mark's acquaintances all believed he was dead, though no one could say exactly what happened. From 2005 to 2015, the Whittaker file existed only as a number on a list, no movement, no updates, just yellowing pages and fading signatures of those who once believed time would make the disappearance fade completely. In June 2016, more than 10 years after the Whittaker file was closed, the long-forgotten name suddenly reappeared in a Bainbridge police report. On the morning of June 12, at 7:45 a.m., a panicked 911 call came from a woman identifying herself as Diane Whittaker. She reported being held at gunpoint in her vehicle by a man who threatened her and forced her to drive for hours before releasing her at a parking area near US 84. When officers arrived, Diane was exhausted, with rope marks on her neck and the rear doors disabled. A nearby witness saw a silver-gray SUV fleeing the scene and provided the license plate. Vehicle registration identified the owner as Ryan Fletcher, a Bainbridge resident previously named in the 2004 Mark Whittaker missing person file. That same afternoon, Fletcher was arrested at his home after a 40-minute standoff in his garage before surrendering. In the trunk of his vehicle, police recovered a handgun, a folding knife, and a rolled plastic tarp. Diane's initial statement said he had been waiting in her car since early morning, held her at gunpoint, forced her to drive toward Lake Seminole, and threatened to end everything. He repeatedly spoke of unfinished business from the past, then changed his mind and fled when he spotted police. The incident was documented as kidnapping and aggravated assault, serious felony charges. In a brief evening press conference, the Bainbridge Police Department confirmed the suspect had previously been closely associated with the family of the 2004 missing person case, and that the file would be transferred to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The following day, Fletcher was formally interviewed at the local GBI office. Lead investigator Lieutenant Natalie Jones, along with the cold case unit, participated due to the direct link between the suspect and the Whittaker case. The interrogation lasted over 5 hours and was fully recorded. When asked about the motive for the kidnapping, Fletcher was incoherent, alternately denying and blaming a panic attack, but midway through, he suddenly said, "If everyone has heard about Mark, they should also know I wasn't the only one at fault in 2004. The statement caused the team to pause recording for consultation. Natalie Jones immediately requested the full original Whittaker file, case number 04M2367, be pulled from Vault 4 in Atlanta, including all hard copies, photos, and original forensic samples. This was the first time in over a decade the file had left storage. While awaiting trial in custody, Fletcher continued referencing the old matter in recorded jail calls. One call extracted by jail monitoring showed him telling a relative, 12 years, and still no one has figured out what really happened on the lake. The recording was forwarded directly to the cold case unit. On June 15, GBI officially reactivated the Mark Whittaker case, changing the status to reopened cold case. The decision was signed by the Special Investigations Unit Director and notified to the District Attorney's Office. A 3-person analysis team was formed under Natalie Jones, including forensic and digital specialists. Their initial task was to re-examine all original documents and cross-reference old statements with new information from the kidnapping. An internal memo stated, "Given that suspect Ryan Fletcher had a direct relationship with the missing victim and has now been arrested for a violent act, the possibility of a connection between the two events separated by 12 years must be investigated." Diane was simultaneously placed under temporary witness protection. In her report to GBI, she admitted Fletcher had been harassing her with repeated calls before the kidnapping, often mentioning Mark in an unstable tone. Police seized Fletcher's phone, recovering deleted messages, multiple searches for Seminole 2004 and missing case, and a topographic map of the lake. GBI Digital Forensics restored the data, confirming he had accessed numerous old articles about Mark's disappearance. These findings further justified the cold case unit's decision to reopen the file. By early July, the team officially received custody of all original evidence: the boat, life jacket, shotgun, search maps, and soil samples. The items were transferred to a modern forensics lab for re-examination using updated technology. The administrative report at month-end stated, "The kidnapping of Diane Whittaker by suspect Ryan Fletcher has triggered renewed review of the Mark Whittaker missing person case. The suspect's personal connection and current violent behavior are of investigative value. The Whittaker file has been reclassified, cold case, active review." Among the cases reopened by GBI in 2016, it was the only one directly involving a suspect who had originally been part of the witness circle in the disappearance, and it marked the first time in over a decade that Mark Whittaker's name was again spoken in Georgia Bureau of Investigation operational meetings. After the GBI Cold Case Unit decided to reopen the Whittaker file, investigator Natalie Jones was assigned as the lead investigator, responsible for reviewing all related documents and physical evidence. In the first week, she and 2 forensic assistants traveled to the Atlanta Storage Center, where the original case files had been sealed since 2005. On the examination table, the old evidence boxes still bore the faded seal signatures of Captain Carter, arranged in order: crime scene items, photographs, soil samples, and sonar reports. Jones began by rereading the entire original report by Harold Mitchell, taking notes on details about wind direction, boat position, and search timing. She paid particular attention to the note: mud sample on the boat's gunwale differs from the soil type at the original launch ramp. In the 2005 file, that detail had been classified as unidentified due to the lack of precise comparative testing equipment at the time. Now, with modern technology, Jones decided to re-examine the sample. The forensics lab handed over 3 glass vials containing mud taken from the boat's gunwale, the launch ramp, and the area where the boat was found. The vials were opened and examined under an electron microscope, analyzing particle structure, moisture content, and impurities. Results showed the mud adhering to the boat's gunwale had a high ratio of sand and yellow clay, matching the soil type on the west shore of Lake Seminole, whereas the original ramp, where Mark was believed to have launched, had fine black clay rich in organic matter. This clear difference led her to note, "Cannot form naturally if the boat only traveled one way from the original ramp to the middle of the lake and then drifted southwest." Jones requested a reconstruction of the boat's drift path based on 2004 weather data, obtaining wind, current, and water level information from the Georgia Meteorological Agency. The hydrodynamic software simulation showed that the natural drift trajectory from the original ramp could not have carried the boat to the location where it was discovered. The 2005 scene report had noted this contradiction, but could not explain it. This time, Jones clearly stated in the new report, "Current data confirms the boat could not have drifted naturally from the launch point to the discovery point. Intervention must be considered." While reviewing, she also re-examined the original crime scene photographs. The 35 film negatives were digitized at higher resolution, revealing clearer details of the shoreline. One photo of the boat ramp showed fresh, deep, wet tire tracks from a pickup truck, indicating the vehicle had moved shortly before the photo was taken. Another photo of the boat on land showed an unusually clean hull with only thin mud at the stern. Jones compared the two images and found no consistency in mud type. The ramp had dark, thick mud, while the boat had lighter, coarser, drier mud. She decided to send the samples to the GBI Geology Lab for precise mineral origin comparison. The test results confirmed her initial observation. The mud on the boat matched the geological composition of the West Shore area, approximately 0.8 miles from the launch point. Beyond the soil discrepancy, Jones reviewed other evidence reports and discovered that the 2005 report noted life jacket mud matching the West Shore type. But it received no attention because the case was then treated as an accident. She combined these findings into a consistent chain of indicators: mud on the boat, mud on the life jacket, and the boat's location, all pointing to the West Shore, not the original ramp. At the Cold Case Unit's internal meeting at the end of the month, Jones presented the new findings. Her summary chart had 3 columns: 2004 data, 2016 test results, and conclusions. On the final line she wrote clearly, "The soil composition discrepancy is the first physical evidence suggesting the original scene may not have been at the southern boat ramp. There are indications the boat was moved after the incident." The meeting minutes were signed and added to the re-examination file. Concurrently, Jones requested the digital unit to scan all old photos and documents for entry into the new investigation system, enabling cross-referencing between physical data and spatial modeling. This process took over a week, but produced a comprehensive composite image of the crime scene. Finally, in the report submitted to GBI leadership, she concluded, "Review of evidence reports and scene photos reveals multiple elements inconsistent with the accident assumption. Mud samples on the boat and life jacket do not match the soil at the launch ramp. The next investigative step is required to determine the true origin of the boat and the environmental conditions when the object was placed." The 26-page report was assigned a new case number and moved to the supplemental forensic analysis phase, officially marking the Whittaker case, after 12 years, as reopened with scientific findings far clearer and better substantiated than previous reports. After the mud sample analysis confirmed the discrepancy between the boat's location and the original ramp, investigator Natalie Jones proposed a full re-examination of all evidence using modern forensic technologies implemented by GBI since 2015. The re-examination order was approved, and the Atlanta Forensic Lab team began unsealing the boat, life jacket, gun, duck decoy box, and stored samples. This time, the process followed the new ISO 17025 standard, utilizing infrared spectroscopy, stable isotope analysis, and trace DNA testing. The boat was placed in a full-spectrum chamber, allowing precise measurement of oxidation layers and mineral deposits on the surface. Results showed the aluminum oxidation formed only under humid air conditions, with no signs of prolonged submersion. Compared to control boats left on the lake with similar soil, the team concluded Mark's boat had been exposed to water for less than 24 hours, contradicting the assumption it had drifted for 2 full days before discovery. Next, nanoparticle analysis technology was used to examine mud and organic matter on the life jacket and hunting rifle. Under electron spectroscopy, the mud particles showed clear layering. The outer layer contained abundant dry pollen and sand, not characteristic of underwater sediment. This proved the items had been kept in a dry or shoreline environment before being placed in the water. DNA analysis was conducted simultaneously, scanning the boat handle, trigger, and life jacket straps using high-sensitivity, touch DNA technique. Results revealed, in addition to Mark Whittaker's DNA, a mixed male DNA profile matching Ryan Fletcher's stored sample from the 2016 kidnapping case at 99.4%. These DNA traces were found on the starboard handle of the boat in the life jacket buckle, 2 locations requiring direct contact when launching or pulling an object into water. Jones reviewed the results and noted in the report, "Cannot rule out the possibility that Ryan Fletcher handled the boat after the incident." Additionally, the physical evidence team applied Raman spectroscopy to identify mineral residue in small cracks on the boat. Spectral comparison showed the residue matched dry West Shore soil but contained no aquatic organisms such as algae or plankton, confirming the object had never been submerged for long. Simulation testing was also conducted. Technicians placed an identical boat in Lake Seminole under recreated December climate conditions and monitored it for 7, 14, and 30 days. Results showed a thin algae layer formed on the waterline after just 3 days. Mark's original boat showed no such traces, proving it had only brief water contact. The 42-page comprehensive re-examination report concluded, "There is no physical evidence that the boat, life jacket, gun and decoy box remained in water long enough to match the reported missing period. The items show signs of dry storage followed by placement in the lake." The forensic lab recommended re-evaluating the original scene under the hypothesis of staged boat placement to simulate an accident. Natalie Jones received the report, carefully studied every chart, especially the Fletcher DNA section, and noted in her investigation assessment, combined spectroscopy, DNA and mineralogy results confirmed the evidence was placed in the lake after the incident. The 2004 scene was not a natural accident location, but intentionally staged. At the Cold Case Unit's internal meeting at the end of August, Jones presented the new findings to GBI leadership. She clearly stated that modern forensic results had completely dismantled the old hunting accident assumption and opened an entirely new investigative direction, proving the 2004 disappearance involved human intervention. The final report of the examination phase was stamped by the forensic lab director with a definitive conclusion: evidence not submerged long enough, did not drift naturally. The 2004 scene was staged. For the first time in 12 years since the incident, the Georgia State Investigative Agency had clear scientific grounds to assert that the so-called hunting accident on Lake Seminole never actually occurred. When the evidence re-examination confirmed the 2004 scene was staged, investigator Natalie Jones shifted the investigation focus to technical data that could support the human intervention hypothesis. While reviewing seized items from the 2016 kidnapping case, she noticed Ryan Fletcher's silver SUV stored in the Bainbridge evidence warehouse. The vehicle had been seized upon his arrest, but was only now examined in detail in connection with the Whittaker file. Under new regulations, all seized vehicles must undergo electronic system checks, including GPS, storage drives, and internal data ports. Jones requested the GBI Digital Forensics Unit to extract data from the vehicle's central memory, a 2013 Ford Explorer equipped with sync navigation. Technicians removed the hard drive and used Cellbrite Vehicle Examiner forensic software to read the complete stored coordinate log from the vehicle's active period. During recovery, they discovered much data had been deleted but remained in hidden memory sectors. After more than 8 hours of processing, the software successfully recovered 342 location points, including routes traveled in the most recent 3 years. Most coordinates matched the Bainbridge and Tallahassee areas where Ryan lived and worked. However, 7 coordinates stood out, all located northwest in Georgia, with the most notable point appearing multiple times on December 14, 2015, and June 10, 2016, just 2 days before Diane's kidnapping. The coordinates were 30, 7,789 degree N, minus 84. 9,094 degree W in the Carr Creek area, approximately 10 road miles from Lake Seminole. The region is remote, sparsely populated, mostly wilderness and marsh, surrounded by pine forest and old dirt roads, once leading to hunting areas. The technical report noted the vehicle's GPS recorded a total stop time of nearly 47 minutes on December 14 and an additional 39 minutes on June 10, with near zero speed. This data was flagged as anomalous because Carr Creek has no residences or commercial facilities and lies off Fletcher's regular commute or home routes. Jones requested detailed route extraction. confirming the vehicle traveled from Bainbridge via County Road 97, then turned onto an unnamed side road ending at a clearing near the water's edge. GBI satellite image comparison showed the area contained a low-lying section with reeds and mangrove roots adjacent to a small branch of the Chattahoochee River. According to 2004 topographic maps, Carr Creek was once directly connected to the Lake Seminole system via shallow waterways, but later silted up and became nearly isolated. Upon reviewing this information, Jones immediately marked the location as a high-interest site and proposed a field survey. Before submitting the formal request, she cross-referenced the GPS data with Ryan's old cell phone records. On both dates, his phone signal left the Bainbridge area and disappeared near Carr Creek during the corresponding time frames. The match between vehicle GPS and cell tower loss significantly increased the data's evidentiary value. Jones prepared a report stating, Fletcher's vehicle navigation system recorded repeated stops at Carr Creek, a geographically and hydrologically linked location to Lake Seminole, approximately 10 miles away. Stop duration and frequency suggest this area may have played a role in the 2004 incident. The GBI technical unit confirmed data accuracy within a per 20-meter margin, sufficient for targeted field search. Jones presented the discovery at the cold case unit meeting, projecting an enlarged satellite map of the coordinates. She pointed to the dark marsh beneath the tree line and said, if the boat was staged, someone had to transport it overland before launching. 10 miles is easily doable without being noticed. The meeting minutes concluded with orders to conduct a Carr Creek survey. Technicians regarded this as the first new suspicious location since the case was reopened. In the internal summary, Jones wrote, GPS data extracted from suspect Ryan Fletcher's vehicle has identified Carr Creek coordinates, a remote area 10 miles from Lake Seminole. This is a location requiring urgent field examination to establish the suspect's connection to the 2004 disappearance. The final line of the report was highlighted in red. New suspicious location identified, Carr Creek. When Carr Creek coordinates were confirmed as the new high-interest point, investigator Natalie Jones decided to expand the field investigation by re-interviewing all witnesses who lived around Lake Seminole in 2004 to verify previously overlooked details. She and a young GBI investigator spent 2 days driving the lake's perimeter roads, from the southern boat ramp to the small West Shore residential area where most original witnesses still lived. Jones's goal was to corroborate statements in the old file about an unusually early gunshot and moving lights on the lake at dawn. The first person she met was fisherman Curtis Grant, who had given the original statement over a decade earlier. Now in his 70s, he still lived in his wooden house overlooking the water. When shown a copy of his old statement, he read slowly, then nodded. I remember that morning clearly. It was still dark, thick fog. I heard a boat motor, but not alone. I saw 2 silhouettes. Jones pressed for details. He emphasized, I'm certain because the light shone in 2 directions. One person steering, one standing near the bow. They said something quietly, then turned the lights off. This information was not in the 2005 report, because he had only mentioned seeing moving lights at the time. This time the statement was fully audio recorded. Jones immediately recognized that the detail of 2 people on the boat matched the staged boat hypothesis, meaning someone else was present with Mark on the lake that morning. The next day, she visited the West Shore lakeside cottages where Ernest and Linda Pope had reported hearing 2 gunshots. Linda answered the door and recalled clearly, we heard 2 shots. The first was smaller, the second louder, only minutes apart. I pulled the curtain and saw a small boat running close to the opposite shore with 2 people. I think one was bent over holding something. Shown a photo of Mark's boat, she confirmed that type silver color. Ernest added, their lights went out very quickly after the second shot. The couple's new statements were documented with an observation position diagram. When cross-referenced with distance and sightlines, the location they observed aligned with the Carr Creek area. Jones checked additional topographic data and realized that a boat traveling from Carr Creek to the west shore would perfectly match the Pope's line of sight from Pope's Inn. She noted in her log, witnesses confirmed 2 men on the boat on the morning of December 18, 2004. Travel direction consistent with Carr Creek to West Shore Lake Seminole route. On the third day, Jones met retired Florida State Lake Patrol Officer Virgil Harper, who had been on duty in the border area. Harper said he received a radio report that morning about an unusually early running boat, but arrived to find only ripples and foam. He also recalled encountering a tall man parked near the southern wooden bridge, wearing a gray hunting jacket, saying he was waiting for a friend. The description closely matched Ryan Fletcher's 2004 physical profile. Though Harper could not confirm the face exactly, he clearly remembered the license plate ending in FJ, matching the first 2 letters of Fletcher's plate seized in 2016. That detail was documented and verified against old registration records, resulting in a match. Back at the office, Jones compiled all statements, created a comparison table with GPS data and maps. All 3 witnesses described 2 men on the boat early that morning, traveling westward before disappearing after the shots. The coordinates from Ryan's vehicle were less than 10 miles away and matched the dawn timing of December 18, 2004. In the Cold Case Unit internal report, Jones wrote former witnesses confirmed 2 men on the boat the morning of the disappearance. Observed direction and timing match suspect Ryan Fletcher's GPS data. The convergence of witness statements and technical evidence strengthens the hypothesis that the victim was not hunting alone and the suspect was present in the lake area. The 12-page report was submitted to the GBI director with a request to fully re-examine the entire Carr Creek to West Shore corridor. For the first time in 12 years, human testimony and technological data aligned perfectly, revealing a new picture of that cold, foggy morning when Mark Whittaker vanished on Lake Seminole. After completing the re-interview of witnesses around Lake Seminole, investigator Natalie Jones shifted the investigation to the financial angle, a lead once considered weak, but now more critical than ever. She requested that the GBI coordinate with the Georgia Department of Revenue to reopen the files on Mark Whittaker's 3 life insurance policies, focusing on the third policy, valued at $1.3 million, issued in 2004 by North Shore Financial and brokered by Ryan Fletcher. The physical files were pulled from the company's archives, containing the original contract, payment records, and signature copies. Jones ordered the GBI handwriting examination lab to conduct a detailed analysis. Mark's known signatures were obtained from bank records, tax filings, and his 2003 hunting license, then compared using the digital stroke comparison system Forensign Analyzer 5.0. The results revealed clear differences in 11 microscopic characteristics, including the initial stroke angle, pen pressure, and the terminal loop of the K in Whittaker. The report concluded a match rate of only 62%, while the threshold for authenticity is above 90%. The examiner stated the signature is highly likely to have been forged, most probably signed by someone else. When Jones cross-referenced North Shore Financial's internal records, she discovered that Mark's signature had been submitted only as a digital scan. No original hard copy signature was ever filed. The archivist confirmed no handwritten document existed. She requested the list of employees who had handled that file. 2 days later, the company provided 3 names: Supervisor John Weller, Clerk Lucy Hall, and the broker directly responsible, Ryan Fletcher. Jones contacted Lucy Hall, now retired in Savannah, for a statement. During the interview, Hall said she clearly remembered the file because it was one of the biggest policies that quarter. When asked who submitted the paperwork, Hall replied, "Ryan brought it in. He said the client was busy and had already signed it. I gave it a quick check, it looked fine, and I passed it up for approval." She confirmed she had never met Mark Whittaker in person and had never seen him sign anything at the office. The statement was recorded, transcribed, and signed. Next, Jones interviewed John Weller, the the supervisor at the time. He added that Ryan handled the entire policy himself, from consultation to filling out forms to submitting the initial premium, which was unusual for company procedure. When asked about signature verification, he admitted they relied on the faxed copy because Fletcher was a long-term trusted employee. Jones noted in her report, both employees confirmed Ryan Fletcher was the sole person who submitted and processed Mark Whittaker's final insurance policy, with no evidence the client signed in the presence of any staff member. To bolster the evidence, she requested the electronic access logs for North Shore's system in July 2004. The Digital Forensics Unit discovered that Ryan's login uploaded the contract file at 9:42 a.m. on July 3rd. The same day the policy was recorded as signed by Mark. The system log showed the IP address originated from Fletcher's office, not the Whittaker residence. All data was printed and attached to the case file. In her summary memo, Jones wrote, "There is sufficient basis to conclude that broker Ryan Fletcher personally submitted the application and is likely responsible for forging the client's signature. The submission process lacked authentication by company personnel in violation of standard procedure." The GBI forwarded the forensic financial package to the Decatur County District Attorney for internal circulation. The final financial forensic report concluded, forged signature, 95% probability. Application submitted by Ryan Fletcher without Mark Whittaker present. This became the first hard evidence of intentional fraud to obtain insurance benefits. Natalie Jones presented the findings at the cold case unit briefing. On screen were enlarged images of the two signatures. One genuine, one on the policy. The difference in the extended tail of the final RAR was immediately obvious to everyone. Jones concluded, "We now have direct financial evidence that the $1.3 million policy was the product of fraud perpetrated by Fletcher. The financial motive is solidified, and the connection between suspect and victim is clearer than ever." The final 18-page report, signed by Jones, ended with the remark, "Evidence of fraud strengthened forgery of signature and intentional submission of non-compliant application by individual with direct ties to the missing victim confirmed." Once the forged signature findings and GPS data were verified, investigator Natalie Jones and the Decatur County District Attorney decided to conduct a second formal interview with Ryan Fletcher, who remained incarcerated at Bainbridge County Jail for the 2016 kidnapping of Diane Whittaker. The interview took place in a GBI's interrogation room under the supervision of two federal agents and the suspect's attorney. Before beginning, Jones laid out the new evidence in order: GPS maps from Ryan's vehicle, soil and DNA analysis results, and the forged signature report. The monitor in front of him displayed satellite imagery of Carr Creek with coordinates 37,789° N, where his truck had stopped twice. Jones stated, "We know you were there. GPS doesn't lie. And we know the boat didn't drift on its own from the ramp to where it was found." Ryan remained silent, eyes fixed on the crime scene photos and boat trajectory diagram. She continued, "These are the spectroscopy results from the boat and life jacket, not submerged long enough. Your DNA is on the handle. And finally, the insurance policy. Mark's signature forged application submitted by you." She placed the handwriting report in front of him with the single word "forged" highlighted. Ryan looked down. His fingers trembled slightly on the table. His attorney interrupted, requesting a break to confer privately. After 10 minutes they returned. Ryan shifted in his seat, exhaled deeply, and said, "If I cooperate, can I get a deal?" Jones replied calmly, "That depends on how truthful you are and the value of your information." After a long pause, Ryan began, "I never meant to kill anybody. It just went too far." Jones activated formal recording. He started, "In 2004, Mark was my best friend. We hunted and did small real estate deals together. I sold him the insurance, and Diane, Mark's wife, knew about it. She was the one pushing it. She said Mark should increase the coverage, that if anything happened the family would be taken care of. I just did what she asked." When pressed, Ryan said, Diane knew everything. I signed for Mark because he hadn't had time to review the paperwork. Diane said, do it so we wouldn't miss the discount deadline. He lowered his head, avoiding eye contact. Jones reopened the witness photos and GPS map and asked, were you at Lake Seminole the morning of December 18, 2004? Ryan slowly looked up and nodded. I was. Mark called me to go duck hunting, said we'd be quick. But it wasn't what I expected. When told to continue, he said, we met at Carr Landing Road, trailered the boat to Carr Creek. He put the boat in. I helped push off. It was dark, heavy fog. I rode in the back, he sat up front. Near the west bank he wanted to check decoys. I don't know, maybe someone was watching. He paused, breathing heavily, then said, then there was a shot. One shot. I don't remember who pulled the trigger. It happened so fast. I panicked. He went into the water. The room fell silent. Jones stared at him and asked, you said a shot. Who fired? Ryan shook. I don't know. I really don't. I turned, saw smoke, and Mark was gone. I tried to grab him but couldn't see him. I drove the boat to shore, dragged it across to the other side, and left it. She pressed, why didn't you call for help? He shook his head, voice breaking. Because I was scared. And Diane, she said, if it came out, we'd both lose everything. She told me to keep quiet, that she'd make it look like an accident. Jones tapped the table. You're saying Diane Whittaker told you that? He nodded, tears running. She knew I was in debt. She promised me a share of the insurance money. Then everything spiraled. I trusted her, but she was colder than I thought. Jones asked, do you have any proof? Ryan answered, nothing left, just old texts. I deleted them. Jones made a note for digital forensics to re-examine his phones and backups. Simulation testing was also conducted. Technicians placed an identical boat in Lake Seminole under recreated December climate conditions and monitored it for 7, 14, and 30 days. Results showed a thin algae layer formed on the waterline after just 3 days. Mark's original boat showed no such traces, proving it had only brief water contact. The 42-page comprehensive re-examination report concluded, there is no physical evidence that the boat, life jacket, gun and decoy box remained in water long enough to match the reported missing period. The items show signs of dry storage followed by placement in the lake. The forensic lab recommended re-evaluating the original scene under the hypothesis of staged boat placement to simulate an accident. Natalie Jones received the report, carefully studied every chart, especially the Fletcher DNA section, and noted in her investigation assessment, combined spectroscopy, DNA and mineralogy results confirmed the evidence was placed in the lake after the incident. The 2004 scene was not a natural accident location, but intentionally staged. At the Cold Case Unit's internal meeting at the end of August, Jones presented the new findings to GBI leadership. She clearly stated that modern forensic results had completely dismantled the old hunting accident assumption and opened an entirely new investigative direction, proving the 2004 disappearance involved human intervention. The final report of the examination phase was stamped by the forensic lab director with a definitive conclusion: evidence not submerged long enough, did not drift naturally. The 2004 scene was staged. For the first time in 12 years since the incident, the Georgia State Investigative Agency had clear scientific grounds to assert that the so-called hunting accident on Lake Seminole never actually occurred. When the evidence re-examination confirmed the 2004 scene was staged, investigator Natalie Jones shifted the investigation focus to technical data that could support the human intervention hypothesis. While reviewing seized items from the 2016 kidnapping case, she noticed Ryan Fletcher's silver SUV stored in the Bainbridge evidence warehouse. The vehicle had been seized upon his arrest, but was only now examined in detail in connection with the Whittaker file. Under new regulations, all seized vehicles must undergo electronic system checks, including GPS, storage drives, and internal data ports. Jones requested the GBI Digital Forensics Unit to extract data from the vehicle's central memory, a 2013 Ford Explorer equipped with sync navigation. Technicians removed the hard drive and used Cellbrite Vehicle Examiner forensic software to read the complete stored coordinate log from the vehicle's active period. During recovery, they discovered much data had been deleted but remained in hidden memory sectors. After more than 8 hours of processing, the software successfully recovered 342 location points, including routes traveled in the most recent 3 years. Most coordinates matched the Bainbridge and Tallahassee areas where Ryan lived and worked. However, 7 coordinates stood out, all located northwest in Georgia, with the most notable point appearing multiple times on December 14, 2015 and June 10, 2016. Just 2 days before Diane's kidnapping. The coordinates were 30, 7,789 degree N, -84. 9,094 degree W in the Carr Creek area, approximately 10 road miles from Lake Seminole. The region is remote, sparsely populated, mostly wilderness and marsh, surrounded by pine forest and old dirt roads, once leading to hunting areas. The technical report noted the vehicle's GPS recorded a total stop time of nearly 47 minutes on December 14th and an additional 39 minutes on June 10th, with near zero speed. This data was flagged as anomalous because Carr Creek has no residences or commercial facilities and lies off Fletcher's regular commute or home routes. He continued that after abandoning the boat, he returned via the dirt track through Carr Creek, where GPS logged the stops. I stopped there thinking I'd go back for the body, but I couldn't. His voice cracked. I didn't kill Mark, I just let it happen. When asked why he staged the scene, Ryan said, 3 days later Diane came to my house with the boat and life jacket, said, "We have to finish this." She wanted everyone to believe he drowned. I helped her tow the boat out and abandon it. Jones had him describe exact location, wind direction, and timing. His details matched the physical evidence, West Bank mud, dawn timing, and the boat's brief submersion. When the interview ended, the more than 30-page transcript was signed by both parties. The final line read, "Suspect Ryan Fletcher begins admitting involvement in the disappearance of Mark Whittaker, confirms his presence at the scene, and implicates Diane Whittaker in staging the accident." For the first time in 12 years, the name of the victim's former wife reappeared in the formal confession of his best friend. The second interview continued the next day, when investigator Natalie Jones returned to Bainbridge Jail for a detailed follow-up statement from Ryan Fletcher. This time, a Georgia state prosecutor and a GBI legal specialist were present. Before starting, Ryan volunteered, "I want to tell the whole truth to end 12 years of torment." The session was fully audio and video recorded, beginning at 9:10 a.m., his voice low and hoarse, hands clasped. There was no accident. It was planned. It's my fault, and Diane's. He confessed the crime had been planned for weeks. Diane Whittaker, Mark's wife, initiated it. They had been having a secret affair for about a year, starting when Ryan helped Mark buy insurance. Diane complained the marriage was dead, that Mark controlled everything, and would never let her be free. He recounted, "She said there was only one way to escape, and still keep everything, make Mark the past." Ryan initially refused, but Diane persuaded him with their relationship and the financial plan tied to the $1.3 million policy he himself had written. She said the money would secure our future, we just had to make it look like an accident. Ryan admitted forging Mark's signature, submitting the application, and ensuring it became effective before year-end. "When I signed for him I knew I'd gone too far, but I couldn't stop. They agreed to use a morning hunting trip, no one would suspect. Diane knew Mark hunted Seminole. She told Ryan to create the opportunity. On the evening of December 17th, Mark called about going out early, and Ryan suggested he join. He said, "I thought I'd just scare him, make him leave, then call it an accident. But out there, I did something worse." He described the morning of December 18th in detail, meeting Mark at Carr Landing Road at 5:30 a.m., trailering to Carr Creek, the shallow slough connecting to Lake Seminole. Mark drove the boat, I sat in back. Halfway through the creek I said I'd set decoys on shore. He stood up. I gave a light push. He lost balance and fell in. I thought he'd swim up, but he panicked and grabbed the gunwale. Ryan stopped, stared at the table, then said slowly, "I was scared." I pulled the trigger. He used Mark's own Browning shotgun, firing one round while Mark was still in the water. I don't know where it hit. I just remember the boom, then silence. He said, after Mark sank, he panicked. But instead of calling police, he drove the boat to shore. I dragged it up, tied it to the truck. I didn't know what else to do but hide everything. When Natalie asked where Mark's body was, Ryan answered, "Carr Creek, right below the high bank with the lone pine." I dug a hole with the shovel I brought. He said it took nearly an hour, then dragged the body ashore with the anchor rope. I wrapped him in a plastic tarp. I'd lost my mind. When I finished, I covered it with dirt and leaves. Afterward, he towed the boat and gear back to the main lake, staging the scene on the west side. I floated it out, placed the gun and life jacket exactly right, and let it drift. I wanted everyone to think he drowned. Ryan continued that 3 days later, Diane came to his house, saying police were looking for the boat. She told me to stay quiet, that if we got caught, she'd say I was only helping search. They stayed in contact during the initial search until it ended. Regarding the insurance money, he admitted Diane filed the claim 6 months after the disappearance. She promised me $200,000 but never paid. They cut contact in 2006, but he remained haunted, especially driving past the Carr Creek turnoff. When asked why he was confessing now, Ryan said, "I can't live with it anymore. I did wrong, and she made me believe it would stay buried forever." He provided precise burial details. About 25 paces from the water's edge, beside the tallest pine, under a flat triangular rock. I left part of the anchor rope underneath. It has a metal hook. Coordinates were recorded 37,791 degree, N-84, 9,122 degree W. Jones had him sign the topographic map, circle the spot, and note the time. His hand shook as he signed, tears falling. "That's where I buried him. I have nothing left to hide." The interview ended after 4 hours. The 37-page transcript and recording were filed in the Whittaker cold case as confession corroborated, pending field verification. That same day, Natalie Jones sent an urgent report to the GBI director requesting an excavation plan for Carr Creek involving forensic anthropology, canine cadaver units, ground-penetrating radar, and seismic equipment from Atlanta, plus the Tallahassee crime scene team. The area was sealed within 12 hours of receiving coordinates. In her internal memo, Jones wrote briefly, "Suspect Ryan Fletcher has detailed the planned luring of Mark Whittaker on a hunting trip, pushing the victim overboard, firing a shotgun, and burying the body at Carr Creek. Coordinates clearly identified. Recommend immediate excavation under maximum security." With that confession, after 12 years of deadlock, the Lake Seminole disappearance finally had a clear direction, and a small patch of ground at Carr Creek, Georgia, was about to become the focus of the largest cold case recovery operation in state history. 2 days after Ryan Fletcher signed his confession transcript, the GBI issued a full lockdown of the Carr Creek area and coordinated with the FBI for excavation. A joint federal-state team of 16 forensic personnel and GBI crime scene technicians arrived at the coordinates 37,791 degree N-84, 9,122 degree W at first light on February 3, 2018. The site lay deep in sparse pine woods, roughly half a mile from the nearest dirt road, on damp, slightly marshy ground. Specialized vehicles lined the access track. Security fencing and privacy screens were erected. It was cold with thick fog. Ground steam rose as morning light filtered through the canopy. Investigator Natalie Jones personally supervised alongside FBI Special Agent Michael Raines, who commanded the dig. The survey began with ground-penetrating radar GPR, scanning 5 Catur's 5-meter grids around Fletcher's marked point. After 3 passes, the screen showed an anomalous oval reflection approximately 1.2 meters deep, and nearly 2.5 meters long. The area was flagged red. Technicians cleared surface leaves, roots, and topsoil. At the target they located the flat triangular rock described in the confession. Digging proceeded manually to preserve evidence integrity. The first layer contained yellow sand and roots. The second layer was darker, wetter, and compacted. By mid-morning a shovel blade struck something hard. Jones knelt, brushing away soil with a small brush, revealing the first adult human femur fragments. The site was immediately tented. Forensic photographers documented every centimeter. As digging continued, the skeleton took shape. Positioned on its side, torso facing south, arms folded across the chest. Beside the left ribs lay shreds of decayed green fabric, and near the right hand glinted a metallic object. When lifted, it was a white gold wedding band inscribed inside D and M, 1998. Natalie recognized the year Mark and Diane Whittaker were married from the original file. She signaled a brief pause for full photographic documentation. Below, excavators recovered fragments of plastic tarp and rusted anchor rope, matching Fletcher's account perfectly. All items were catalogued: X01 skeletal remains, X02 ring, X03 fabric, X04 rope. Soil samples around the body were collected for moisture and burial dating. By end of day 1, most of the skeleton had been recovered, placed in evidence boxes, sealed, and transported to the Atlanta Medical Examiner. The FBI preliminary report confirmed male, age 30-35. Height approximately 5'11", consistent with Mark Whittaker. The following morning's skull examination revealed a circular penetration wound through the mandible, consistent with close-range shotgun injury. A deformed shotgun shell wadding compressed in nearby soil was recovered and sent for comparison to Mark's Browning. Under noon sunlight filtering through the pines, the site was quiet, except for the sound of brushes and camera shutters. Natalie Jones stood silently, holding the bagged wedding ring, feeling the full weight of more than 12 years of waiting. By late afternoon, every item was transported to Atlanta in double-sealed containers. At the GBI Forensic Lab, DNA extraction began that night. A femur sample was pulverized and nuclear STR-DNA recovered, despite heavy decomposition. After 36 hours, a complete profile was obtained and compared to the maternal reference sample preserved from 2005. Match probability, 99.98%. The official report, signed February 7, 2018, read, DNA analysis confirms remains recovered at Carr Creek belonged to Mark Whittaker, born March 22, 1973, Thomasville, Georgia resident. The internal GBI bulletin added, skeletal remains and associated evidence recovered at location provided by suspect, 100% corroboration with confession and GPS data. Cause of death, close-range gunshot wound. When the report reached the prosecutor's office, the Whittaker cold case file status changed from reopened investigation to homicide, confirmed. Natalie signed the final excavation report, eyes fixed on the line, victim identity confirmed. Outside, Carr Creek returned to silence after the convoy departed, leaving only a neat square of disturbed earth among the pines. The place where a 14-year search ended, where the truth was finally unearthed beneath the cold mud of South Georgia. After the DNA results confirmed that the skeletal remains discovered at Carr Creek belonged to Mark Whittaker, the GBI proceeded with the final phase of the forensic investigation protocol, a 3D crime scene reconstruction, to verify the accuracy of Ryan Fletcher's statement and to establish the complete sequence of events leading to the victim's death. The GBI's Crime Scene Reconstruction Unit in Atlanta, working in collaboration with the FBI's scene modeling team, used Forensic Suite 3D software and a Faro Focus's laser scanner to recreate the Seminole Lake and Carr Creek area as it existed in December 2004, based on topographic data, weather records, and physical evidence. More than 400 photographs, GPS maps, and excavation reports were imported into the spatial model, enabling simulation of bullet trajectory, wind direction, and boat position at specific time intervals. First, the technicians built a full-scale model of Mark's boat and placed it on a simulated water surface with an average depth of 1.5 meters, the location where Ryan claimed the struggle occurred. They positioned the victim model standing near the bow, facing the driver. When the gunshot trajectory simulation was activated based on the lower jaw wound, the system displayed a bullet path traveling upward at a 27-degree angle, perfectly matching Ryan's statement, "I was seated in the back, he was standing in front, I pulled the trigger as he was falling." This result was corroborated by the FBI ballistics team, proving the firing direction was fully consistent with the skull wound and the projectile structure recovered at the scene. Next, the technicians input December 2004 weather data, north to south winds at 7 IMPOI, to test whether the boat could have drifted naturally from Carr Creek to the location where it was originally found. The model showed that, under actual wind speed and direction, the boat would have been pushed toward the southern shore, not the southwest shore as recorded in the old report. However, when the simulation incorporated a manual steering adjustment matching Ryan's description, I brought the boat to the west bank and left it there. The model immediately aligned with the actual 2004 discovery location, proving the statement was logically consistent. The following step involved importing GPS data from Ryan's vehicle, extracted in Part 15 into the 3D terrain model of Carr Creek to determine the travel route. The system displayed a path that looped along a dirt track and stopped precisely at the burial site, matching exactly the coordinates where the remains were exhumed. When the vehicle route, boat position and lake sonar map were displayed simultaneously, the model revealed the complete sequence of movements between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. on December 18, 2004. Ryan's truck stopped at Carr Landing, the boat was launched into Carr Creek, moved to the middle of the creek, a shot was fired. The boat then returned to the west bank, and the truck departed. All timestamps were synchronized using Mark's and Ryan's phone logs, creating a minute-by-minute chain of events. The technical team then reconstructed lighting and visibility conditions. With dense fog and the sun at a 5-degree elevation angle, they determined that a witness at Pope's Inn could only have seen a faint reflection of lights and the silhouettes of 2 people in the boat, matching the new witness statement obtained in Part 16. Taken together, these elements produced a complete spatial model describing the incident in 3 phases: approach, confrontation, departure from the scene. The simulation showed that after the shot, the person in the rear pulled the anchor rope, nosed the boat into the bank, and returned to Carr Creek via the dirt road, exactly matching the stored GPS track. The 56-page reconstruction report concluded, firing direction, bullet trajectory, boat position, and environmental conditions are fully consistent with suspect Ryan Fletcher's statement. No physical discrepancies exist. Simulation results confirm the incident occurred in the Carr Creek area, not the southern boat ramp of Lake Seminole. Natalie Jones signed off on the composite diagram, which included the 3D map and timeline reference table. An investigative summary was sent to the Georgia State Prosecutor with the note, "Physical evidence, DNA, GPS data, and scene simulation have formed a closed chain of evidence that rules out accident and substantiates the suspect's statement." On the large screen in the GBI conference room, the 3D model displayed a gray, foggy lake surface, a small boat moving slowly through the mist, a single gunshot echoing, then silence. When the simulation ended, Natalie Jones stood up, stared at the image for a long moment, and said to her colleagues, "Now we have seen exactly what happened." And on the Georgia State investigation map, the Mark Whittaker missing person case was officially reclassified from unresolved missing person to confirmed homicide, crime scene fully reconstructed. After completing the 3D crime scene reconstruction and confirming that Ryan Fletcher's statement matched all physical evidence, Inspector Natalie Jones shifted the investigation to the remaining central figure, Diane Whittaker. The objective was to determine her role in planning and staging the 2004 crime. Pursuant to a search warrant approved by the Decatur County Court, the GBI seized all of Diane's electronic devices, personal computers, external hard drives, and email accounts, including addresses used between 2003 and 2006. The digital evidence was sealed and transferred to the GBI Atlanta Digital Forensics Lab for data recovery and analysis. Forensic technicians used in-case forensics and magnet axiom to extract all files, browser histories, and deleted emails. More than 40,000 files were scanned, mostly work documents and family photos, but in hidden memory partitions, the software detected an email chain between the addresses diane.whittaker@patriotmail.com and rfletcher@northshorefin.com, dating from August to December 2004, the exact period before the disappearance. These emails had been deleted, but the system recovered 28 complete messages and more than 60 message fragments. The content revealed a romantic relationship between the two, and crucially, discussions about our future plans after December. One email dated November 2nd read, "You said you'd handle the paperwork. I just need to make sure he goes to the lake on the right day." Another email dated December 8th, titled "Everything is Ready," contained the line, "We have to make it look completely natural. You know he always trusts you." Additionally, temporary files on the hard drive contained unsent email drafts in which Diane wrote, "When this is over, no one will suspect anything. It'll just be you, me, and our daughter." The timestamps matched the night before the disappearance. Beyond the emails, the team recovered data from an old Yahoo Messenger installation stored on an external drive. A conversation thread from December 17, 2004, at 22:41, showed Ryan writing, "Everything is set for tomorrow morning, 5:30. Diane replied, "Don't leave anything behind. I'll be waiting for word." This was the first electronic evidence proving Diane knew the exact time Mark would be at the lake and had a coordinating role in the plan. When access logs were examined, technicians discovered multiple logins to the North Shore insurance account from Diane's IP address in July 2004, the same month Ryan submitted the policy. Moreover, in the folder Documents Insurance, a backup PDF copy of the insurance policy in Mark Whittaker's name was found, created on Diane's computer 2 days before the official policy was filed. Jones reviewed all the data and noted suspect accessed, stored and edited insurance documents prior to the disappearance. Direct financial link to the broker confirmed. The external hard drive also contained a photo folder named Weekend, with 20 pictures of Diane and Ryan together at Panama City Beach in October 2004. One was captioned by hand, "Our last month before freedom." The entire digital chain created a tight connection between Diane and Ryan, before, during, and after the crime. When the email timeline was cross-referenced with old phone records, GBI determined that, on the night of December 17th, immediately before Mark vanished, Diane called Ryan at 22:50 for 4 minutes and 12 seconds, matching the Yahoo Messenger timestamp of tomorrow 5:30. A 65-page technical report was produced, concluding recovered electronic data from Diane Whittaker's computers and email accounts contained content proving discussion, arrangement, and coordination with Ryan Fletcher prior to the disappearance. The messages demonstrate clear awareness of the plan to cause the incident. When the report was presented at the Cold Case Unit meeting, Natalie Jones pointed to the screen displaying the email line, "He always trusts you," and said, "This is the sentence that defines the entire case. Everything began with trust and ended with betrayal." The meeting minutes were filed with the final conclusion. Digital discoveries proved Diane Whittaker's collusion and premeditation with Ryan Fletcher prior to Mark Whittaker's disappearance. Technical findings strengthened the evidence of intentional criminal conduct. After the Digital Forensics Unit completed its report, the GBI and the Georgia State Prosecutor's Office unanimously agreed that the electronic evidence recovered from Diane Whittaker's computers and email accounts was sufficient to file criminal charges. On February 19, 2018, a Decatur County judge signed an emergency arrest warrant for Diane on charges of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and obstruction of justice. The warrant was handed to a joint GBI Bainbridge Police Task Force. At 6:15 a.m. the following day, 3 GBI vehicles pulled up in front of the small suburban house where Diane was living with her adult daughter. Morning mist still hung in the air. Red and blue lights swept across the trees. Inspector Natalie Jones was present with the execution team and watched as 2 officers knocked and announced themselves. Diane opened the door in her pajamas, her face expressionless as the charges were read. She said only one sentence, "I knew this day would come." The entire procedure was recorded per protocol. After being handcuffed, Diane was placed in a vehicle while the search team executed the accompanying warrant. They seized a laptop, 2 portable hard drives, a folder of bank records, and numerous financial documents related to accounts opened in her name between 2004 and 2007. In the bedroom, investigators located a small safe containing copies of the insurance policies, correspondence from North Shore, and 2 old cash receipts. Everything was sealed. Additionally, in a drawer they found a black USB drive labeled Family. A preliminary check revealed scanned copies of the policies and bank transfer statements from the joint account she shared with Mark before his disappearance. All evidence was transported directly to GBI Atlanta. At the same time, the prosecutor's office held a brief press conference announcing an individual directly involved in the 2004 Mark Whittaker case has been arrested after investigators obtained electronic evidence confirming participation in staging the scene and obstructing the investigation. The name was not released, but the news spread quickly. Local media ran headlines reading GBI reopens Seminole case. Wife arrested. While Diane was transported to the Thomas County Detention Facility, Natalie Jones's team continued inventorying assets. Financial records showed that after receiving the 2005 insurance payout, Diane had transferred portions to accounts in relatives' names and invested in small Bainbridge real estate, later sold in 2008. These transactions had never been examined because the original missing person file was closed. GBI determined the total amount profited was $1.3 million, most of which had been withdrawn or spent. During initial questioning at the detention center, Diane declined a public defender and requested private counsel. She remained silent in response to all questions, saying only, "I did nothing except protect my family." In the arrest report, the officer noted, "Subject calm and cooperative but avoided eye contact, neither denied nor admitted guilt." At the cold case unit office, Natalie signed off on completion of the arrest phase and forwarded the report to the state prosecutor, stating, "On February 20, 2018, the arrest warrant for Diane Whittaker was executed. Seized evidence includes original insurance contracts, financial documents, and digital storage devices. Defendant charged with conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice based on recovered 2004 electronic records." The investigative summary ended with the note, "With Diane Whittaker's arrest, every link in the Mark Whittaker case has been identified, from financial motive and staged planning to 14 years of concealment." After Diane Whittaker's arrest, the GBI transferred all samples from the Carr Creek excavation to the Georgia State Medical Examiner's office for supplemental forensic examination to finalize the prosecution file before submission to the state court. Under the direction of Dr. Amelia Warren, Chief of Forensics, the specialists began detailed analysis of the skull, cervical vertebrae, and soil adhering to the remains. Using high-resolution 3D CT imaging, they identified a circular penetration through the lower jaw extending to the left cheekbone, with bone margin fracturing characteristic of a close-range gunshot wound. Under electron microscopy, radial cracking and star-shaped fractures indicated high-velocity impact from a 12-gauge shotgun round, the exact type of Browning shotgun recovered in Mark's boat in 2004. Analysis of residual minerals in the wound revealed lead, copper, and zinc traces that perfectly matched Remington 12-gauge No. 4 shot, the common ammunition Mark and Ryan used for hunting. The FBI ballistics examiner conducted test firing comparisons. The spent shell casing recovered at Carr Creek showed 98% rifling mark congruence with the Browning barrel, direct physical linkage between weapon and victim. Additionally, microscopic metal particles were found on the left shoulder blade, gunpowder residue from a discharge no farther than 1.5 meters. From these findings, the report concluded cause of death, penetrating facial wound from close-range shotgun fire, trajectory upward. The result aligned perfectly with the prior 3D crime scene reconstruction. Next, the environmental forensics team analyzed soil and organic residue in the clothing and skull cavity. Using Raman spectroscopy and pollen analysis, the soil was found to contain yellow sand mixed with clay, high silica, and pine pollen, characteristics unique to the Carr Creek area. Comparison with soil from the southern Seminole boat ramp showed complete mismatch. The ramp had black mud and algae, while Carr Creek soil was dry and sandy. Thus, the soil and the remains matched the burial site exactly, with no evidence of post-mortem relocation. Specialists also detected trace gunpowder and burnt propellant particles in remaining soft tissue. Chemical analysis confirmed nitrocellulose propellant used in Remington ammunition, further proving the shot was fired at the Carr Creek scene. The 52-page supplemental forensic report concluded, victim Mark Whittaker died from a penetrating head wound caused by 12-gauge shotgun fire. The gunpowder residue and soil matched the Carr Creek location, ruling out death elsewhere. The results were sent directly to Inspector Natalie Jones and the state prosecutor's office. At the final briefing in GBI Atlanta, Dr. Warren presented 3 DCT images of the skull, clearly showing the bullet channel and firing angle. An adjacent screen displayed soil particle comparison charts, proving the Carr Creek samples shared identical ratios of silica, calcium, and pine pollen with the burial pit samples. The Georgia state prosecutor noted this as independent forensic evidence confirming location and mechanism of the crime. Natalie Jones compiled all results from DNA identification, GPS data, confession, to forensic reports into the official prosecution file. In her final assessment she wrote, "Supplemental forensic examination provides scientific proof of the mechanism of death and crime scene location. Results confirm firearm injury, shell casing match with the Browning shotgun, soil and gunpowder residue match with Carr Creek, sufficient basis to complete prosecution of Ryan Fletcher and Diane Whittaker for premeditated murder and conspiracy to conceal the crime." The report was signed and dated February 28, 2018, marking the completion of the forensic investigation phase and transforming the vague 2004 missing person case into a fully evidenced homicide file with synchronized scientific, physical, and testimonial proof. Ready for the prosecution phase in Georgia State Court. In April 2018, 14 years after Mark Whittaker vanished, the Thomas County Court officially opened the criminal trial titled State of Georgia v. Diane Whittaker. The courthouse, a historic granite building in downtown Thomasville that had hosted many of the state's landmark cases, was placed under tight security from early morning. Corridors were packed with reporters, citizens, and judicial staff. On the defendant's bench, Diane appeared unusually calm in a dark suit, her face betraying no emotion. Opposite her, the prosecution was led by Georgia's Chief Prosecutor William Hartley, joined by the GBI investigation team and FBI representatives. Presiding was Judge Harold C. Dwyer, veteran of numerous federal homicide trials. When the gavel first sounded, Hartley rose and delivered the opening statement. "Your Honor, this is the most sophisticated murder concealment in Thomas County history, hidden for over 14 years and disguised as a hunting accident. Today we bring before the court not just testimony, but scientific, financial, and technical evidence proving that the defendant and her accomplice conspired to and did murder Mark Whittaker to collect insurance money." Over the first 2 days, the court heard the investigation team's presentation. Inspector Natalie Jones was called as the first witness. She methodically outlined the findings from reopening the file, DNA analysis, 3D reconstruction, GPS data, and recovered emails. She displayed on screen the bullet trajectory diagram, 3D skull images, and the Carr Creek map, explaining how every piece of data formed an irrefutable logical chain. The prosecution entered all 267 items of physical and technical evidence, from the wedding ring to soil samples, emphasizing, everything points to one place, Carr Creek. On the third day, the key witness, Ryan Fletcher, was called. He entered the courtroom in orange prison garb, hands cuffed, under heavy guard. Protected by his plea agreement for a reduced sentence, he swore to cooperate. His voice shook as he began, "I will tell everything I did." For 3 hours, Ryan detailed the plan, luring Mark to the lake and the killing at Carr Creek. He reiterated Diane's role in persuading Mark, signing the insurance policies, and directing the staging of the scene. When the prosecutor asked, "Who told you to leave the boat at Lake Seminole so everyone would think it was an accident?" he answered, "Diane did. She said everything had to look believable." While he spoke, Diane maintained an icy expression, staring straight at the judge, never once glancing toward him. After the witness, the prosecution displayed the recovered emails between them. The words on screen, "He'll trust you. Don't leave anything behind. I'll be waiting for word," silenced the courtroom. Hartley declared, "These are the defendant's words, 4 hours before her husband disappeared." A murmur swept the room. The judge banged the gavel for order. Next, the GBI digital forensics expert testified, explaining the email and message recovery process and confirming the original files had never been altered. Financial records were introduced. Diane was the sole beneficiary of 3 policies totaling $1.8 million, including $1.3 million from the policy with the forged signature. The prosecutor pointed out that less than 2 weeks after the missing person file was closed in 2005, she had filed claims for payout. These facts were presented as the clearest motive. The defense attempted to counter, arguing the emails could have been fabricated and that Ryan Fletcher was the mastermind, while Diane was merely manipulated by him. Her attorney stressed, "There is no photo or direct evidence placing the defendant at the scene." However, Natalie Jones's cross-examination demolished that argument. She presented the chain of IP logins to the insurance system from Diane's computer and the policy backup file found on Diane's personal USB. She stated, "No one but the defendant could have created and kept these documents." On the 5th day, Dr. Amelia Warren, chief forensic pathologist, took the stand to present the supplemental findings. Pointing to the 3D skull image on screen, she said, "This is the bullet hole passing through the lower jaw and cheekbone. The fracture pattern and remaining lead particles prove the shot was fired from no more than 1.5 meters. This is scientific proof the victim was shot, not killed in an accident." Media and the public followed the trial almost live. It was described as one of the most impactful proceedings in Thomas County history. The evening news on WCTV Tallahassee called it the trial of 20 years of silence. When the prosecution rested, Hartley delivered his closing. It was not the lake, not the gun, but greed and deceit that killed Mark Whittaker. For 14 years, silence was built like a wall. Today we tear it down with the truth. The gavel sounded, ending the 6th day. The judge announced the trial would move to final arguments before the jury began deliberations. The official record for that day noted, prosecution presented complete technical, financial, and testimonial evidence. Witness Ryan Fletcher confirmed his full confession. GBI completed presentation, affirming a unified, contradiction-free chain of evidence. Trial proceeds to verdict phase. On the 6th day of the trial at the Thomas County Courthouse, the prosecution continued its core presentation, the entire chain of scientific evidence collected by the GBI and FBI over 2 years of reinvestigating the case. Leading off, investigator Natalie Jones and the forensic specialist took the witness stand and projected the consolidated report that included GPS data, spectroscopic results, DNA analysis, and digital forensics. She began with a location map of Ryan Fletcher's vehicle, a 3-dimensional simulation of the travel route, clearly showing 2 stops at Carr Creek in December 2015 and June 2016. Locations that exactly matched where the remains were excavated. She explained the extraction process from the vehicle's sync navigation system, how deleted coordinates were recovered using forensic software, and confirmed the margin of error was only within 20 meters. As the model played, the jury watched the closed-loop route between Bainbridge and Carr Creek, proving the suspect had repeatedly returned to the old crime scene. Next, the forensic team presented the spectroscopic analysis of the boat's surface and equipment. Laboratory images displayed metal oxidation graphs and infrared light spectra, clearly showing that the mud and mineral layer on the boat had not been submerged in water for any extended period. Dr. Amelia Warren explained, "We measured the aluminum ion levels on the surface. If the boat had been underwater for more than 24 hours, the oxidation layer would be 3 times thicker. But these samples only showed formation within a few hours, meaning it was placed in the lake after the victim was already dead." Whispers spread throughout the courtroom. She projected additional Raman spectroscopy images of soil particles, highlighting the difference between the black mud from the south boat ramp and the yellow clay sand from the west bank, where the boat was found. This difference proves the scene was not natural. It was staged intentionally, she concluded. Then the GBI DNA specialist presented the trace results from the boat handle and life jacket clasp. Using touch DNA techniques, they detected a mixture of genetic material from 2 individuals, Mark Whittaker and Ryan Fletcher, while samples from other items were completely clean and contained no foreign DNA. The specialist explained the process. "We microscopically scraped each section of the handle, extracted and amplified the DNA across 28 cycles. The results showed a 99.4% match to the Ryan Fletcher profile stored in the database from 2016. The matching gene sequence chart was projected large on the screen, causing many jurors to nod. Following the DNA portion, the digital forensic specialist took the stand to present the data recovered from Diane Whittaker's computer. He described step by step how EnCase software was used to extract emails, logs, and old Yahoo Messenger chats, all verified by timestamps and IP addresses. He stated, "Every recovered email was stored in hidden memory sectors. They cannot be faked because they contain the original system integrity checks. We confirmed emails between Diane's account and Ryan were sent between August and December 2004, with content showing intent to orchestrate the event." The words, "He will believe you," appeared on screen, quoted verbatim from a recovered email. Defense counsel objected, arguing electronic data could be manipulated, but the specialist detailed the security protocol. The hard drive was sealed, HA256 hashed, and the chain of custody monitored from seizure to analysis. There are no signs of tampering. The courtroom fell silent. Natalie Jones then tied all the evidence groups together. She opened the master diagram, a large color-coded board displaying 3 layers of data: digital, physical, and biological. The bottom layer contained GPS and vehicle tracks. The middle layer included boat spectroscopy, DNA, and soil. The top layer held emails, messages, and insurance policies. Arrows connected Diane to Ryan to Carr Creek. "This is not a theory," she said. "It is an independently verified chain of scientific facts showing the 2004 disappearance was deliberately staged." She further explained how soil samples were analyzed using stable isotopes to determine geographic origin, matching perfectly with the Carr Creek area, and how pollen found in the remains proved the burial environment was the western pine forest, not the open lake area. Finally, the financial expert presented the verification process for the insurance policies, how signatures were examined using the foreign sign analyzer, comparing 11 pen stroke characteristics and proving Ryan Fletcher forged Mark's signature with Diane's consent. The projection showed side-by-side scans of the real and forged policies, the curved and slanted strokes clearly different. When the presentation ended, Prosecutor Hartley summarized, "We have GPS proving the journey, spectroscopy proving a staged scene, DNA proving contact, digital data proving conspiracy, and financial records proving motive. 5 pieces, 1 single truth. Mark Whittaker's disappearance was never an accident." He turned to the jury. "Every sample, every number says the same thing. This was a carefully prepared crime, not fate or negligence." The defendant and her accomplice calculated every detail to commit murder and deceive justice. Judge Dwyer struck the gavel for recess, but before everyone left, Natalie Jones added one final sentence. All the scientific evidence has finally given Mark Whittaker his voice back, and the truth can no longer be buried under the mud of Carr Creek. The seventh day of trial marked the most intense phase, closing arguments and jury deliberation. After all scientific evidence had been presented, Prosecutor William Hartley stepped forward, looked directly at the 12 jurors, and his voice rang clear in the silent room. We are no longer talking about a disappearance. We are talking about premeditated murder, staged and concealed with cold calculation. He opened the thick file on the podium and read each point slowly. First, Mark Whittaker did not die by accident, but from a close-range gunshot, proven by forensic pathology and bullet trajectory. Second, the Seminole Lake scene was arranged to mislead, shown by spectroscopic and physical evidence. Third, the defendant's financial motive came from 3 insurance policies, the final one bearing a forged signature submitted by her lover. Fourth, the defendant communicated, coordinated, and directed accomplice Ryan Fletcher to carry out the plan, proven by emails, access logs, and messages. He paused, looked directly at Diane, and declared, "That man trusted you completely, and you repaid him with complete betrayal." Then he turned back to the jury. "There is no accident here. This is greed. This is deceit. This is a crime, nurtured for 14 years. After the prosecution rested, defense attorney Carolyn Myers rose to rebut. Her voice was calm and measured as she tried to sow doubt. "Ladies and gentlemen, this entire case is built on the word of one man, a man who admits he pulled the trigger, buried the body, and now hopes for a lighter sentence. Can we stake a woman's life on the word of a self-confessed killer trying to save himself?" She pointed out there is no photographic evidence placing Diane at the scene. That recovered emails cannot be conclusively attributed to her without two-factor verification. "We cannot convict someone simply because she once had an improper relationship," she said. "Love can blind people, but it does not turn them into murderers." She highlighted inconsistencies in Ryan's statements, sometimes claiming the shooting was accidental, sometimes planned, arguing he made up stories to drag Diane down with him. The attorney argued the GBI may have read too much into technical data, that some GPS coordinates merely reflected Ryan hunting or resting at Carr Creek. She concluded, justice should not be built on speculation. When rebuttal ended, Prosecutor Hartley rose for the final word. "No one is speculating. We have DNA, GPS, forged signatures, emails, insurance money, and a confession. 5 pieces that fit perfectly together. Not one stands alone, but together they form only one picture." He held up the wedding ring found beside the remains. "This is not theory. This is evidence." The gallery fell silent. Only the scratch of the clerk's pen could be heard. Judge Dwyer announced, "The jury has sufficient evidence to deliberate." He reminded the members they must decide based on 3 criteria: intent, complicity, and conspiracy. The 12 silently left the courtroom carrying hundreds of pages of documents, photographs, and expert reports. In the jury room they reviewed the full trajectory maps, DNA samples, insurance contracts, and Ryan's testimony. On the whiteboard, they drew the relationship diagram between Mark, Diane, and Ryan and reconnected events along a timeline. One juror said, "If this was an accident, why forge the signature and stage the boat?" Another replied, "If she's innocent, why do the emails match the day Mark died?" Discussion lasted through the night. Outside, rain fell steadily on Thomasville Square, while residents still gathered waiting. Near midnight, the jury completed their secret ballot. The verdict form was sealed in a red envelope and hand-delivered to Judge Dwyer with a notation. Verdict reached after review of all scientific evidence and witness testimony. The judge signed for it and scheduled pronouncement for the following morning. Inside the county jail, Diane Whittaker sat motionless, hands clasped. Outside at GBI headquarters, Natalie Jones stared at the final system update. Status: jury deliberating, technical evidence fully authenticated, awaiting verdict. On the morning of April 18, 2018, the main courtroom of the Thomas County Courthouse was packed. Golden light streamed through the high windows, reflecting off the tense face of Diane Whittaker as she sat motionless at the defense table. The jury returned after 12 hours of deliberation, carrying the sealed red envelope. When Judge Harold C. Dwyer received it, all whispers stopped. He opened the envelope, read silently for a moment, then looked up and announced in a steady, clear voice, "On count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The jury finds defendant Diane Whittaker guilty. On count 2, obstruction of justice and evidence tampering, the jury finds the defendant guilty." In that moment, Diane closed her eyes, lips pressed tight, showing no emotion. A long sigh escaped from the victim's family row. Prosecutor Hartley bowed his head, while investigator Natalie Jones gripped her case file tightly. Judge Dwyer continued, "Having considered all physical, scientific, and testimonial evidence, the court sentences defendant Diane Whittaker to 30 years imprisonment with no parole eligibility for the first 25 years. The defendant is stripped of all rights to any property, insurance proceeds, or trusts related to victim Mark Whittaker." The gavel struck sharply, marking the end of a case that had spanned nearly 2 decades. Diane lowered her head, hands trembling but maintaining composure as officers cuffed and led her away. She said nothing, only glancing at the gallery where her daughter sat silently, tears streaming down her face. Outside the courthouse, reporters jostled for position. Headlines appeared the same day: Seminole Lake mystery closed, wife sentenced to 30 years. At the post-trial press conference, Prosecutor Hartley spoke briefly. "Today justice arrived late, but it arrived proven by science. There is no longer any doubt. Mark Whittaker's disappearance was a staged homicide." The GBI issued a statement confirming the outcome, noting every piece of evidence, from GPS data to DNA analysis, had been independently cross-verified. When asked for her thoughts, investigator Natalie Jones said only, "This is not a victory, it is simply the closing of the truth." Simultaneously, the court formally approved the cooperation agreement with witness Ryan Fletcher. Under the signed terms, he retained his 20-year sentence for kidnapping and providing substantial assistance in exchange for no additional murder charge. Fletcher will continue serving at Reedsville State Prison and becomes parole eligible after 15 years. Reporters captured him in his cell, eyes sunken, reading news of Diane's sentence. Meanwhile, the Georgia State Prosecutor's Office officially closed the file, State v. Whittaker, marking the case concluded. The jacket note reads, "Jury determined accomplice Ryan Fletcher directly responsible for the victim's death. Defendant Diane Whittaker responsible for planning and obstruction of justice. Sentence, 30 years for Whittaker, 20 years for Fletcher." In Thomasville, residents gathered in the square beneath the old photo of Mark in his duck hunting gear. An elderly man who had joined the 2004 search whispered, "We looked for him for 44 days, who knew it would take 14 years to find justice." At GBI Atlanta, Natalie closed the 800-plus page case file, labeled it "Closed, Conviction Secured." Inside were crime scene photos, GPS data, emails, bullet trajectory maps, and placed on the very first page, Mark's daughter's birth certificate. When she turned off the lights and left the office, the clock read exactly 7 p.m. The same time Mark Whittaker was reported missing in 2004. The case was closed, everyone involved had received their sentence, and over Lake Seminole the thick southern Georgia fog settled once more, this time hiding nothing. 2 weeks after the final sentence was handed down, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation released its comprehensive 176-page final report on the Whittaker case, considered the most thorough review in the state's cold case history. The press conference was held at GBI headquarters in Atlanta on May 3, 2018, attended by representatives from the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the state prosecutor's office. Then Director Samuel Porter opened with numbers that silenced the room: 14 years, 12,000 investigative hours, 38 witnesses, and 156 items of physical evidence analyzed, examined, and verified. He spoke slowly, emphasizing that the Whittaker case was not only a solved crime, but a journey proving the power of combining science, data, and persistence. The report detailed 4 main investigative phases: 1. The initial 2004-2005 search period; 2. The 2005-2015 cold case dormancy; 3. The 2016-2018 reinvestigation; and 4. Prosecution and trial. Technical statistics showed the GBI conducted 276 DNA tests, 43 spectroscopic analyses, 28 ballistics reports, and more than 90 digital data recoveries from old devices. The suspect vehicle's unique GPS system was restored after 3 months of processing, while recovering Diane's emails required over 200 computer hours. Over 14 years, the Whittaker file passed through 22 investigators, 7 forensic team leaders, and 3 bureau directors. The report noted that Natalie Jones, who reopened the file in 2016, was the key figure who connected old and new data layers and created the investigative breakthrough. A special section described the evidence chain protocol, in which every item from the boat, gun, life jacket, to soil samples was managed with QR identifiers and electronic logging, ensuring nothing was lost over more than a decade. The GBI credited this protocol with allowing the 2017 re-examinations to be accepted in court without objection. The appendix listed personnel: 12 forensic scientists, 8 digital technicians, 4 financial investigators, 6 FBI agents, and numerous independent consultants. More than 200 people directly or indirectly involved. The report also detailed the 38 witnesses interviewed, from Seminole Lake residents and North Shore insurance employees to the engineer who once serviced Ryan Fletcher's vehicle GPS system. In its conclusion, the GBI stated, "The Whittaker case proves that long-dormant disappearances can still be solved through technology and determination. Interagency cooperation between state and federal units has created a model for future cold case investigation." Among its recommendations, the GBI proposed applying spectroscopic re-examination and digital data recovery protocols to all unsolved state cases, and adding the Whittaker case to the official curriculum of the Georgia Cold Case Training Academy as the model of integrated evidence chain investigation. Copies of the complete file, over 800 pages, were archived in the National Repository at Quantico under identifier GA Cold Case 2004 MW. At the release, Director Porter stressed, "What we are most proud of most is not the conviction itself, but the process of proving truth through scientific method." The report's final section, Community Impact, stated briefly, "The Whittaker case has changed how the people of Georgia view justice, that sometimes the truth takes 14 years to be heard, but once it speaks, nothing can silence it again." After the release of the final summary report, the GBI, in coordination with the Georgia Department of Justice, issued an internal operational analysis and legal impact assessment of the Whittaker case, a specialized document used internally to evaluate how modern investigative methods have transformed the framework for handling cold cases and the related legal procedures in homicide cases involving insurance elements. The analysis begins by identifying 3 technical pillars that form the breakthrough in the investigation: GPS positioning, digital data recovery, and next-generation forensic examination. The GPS system is regarded as the first turning point, because in the past, older vehicles were rarely exploited as sources of evidence. The GBI describes in detail the process of extracting hidden memory from the sync navigation system, recovering more than 300 deleted coordinates, which allowed investigators to reconstruct the suspect's travel route many years after the crime. This marked the first time in Georgia judicial history that GPS data from a civilian vehicle was admitted in court as circumstantial evidence proving the suspect's presence at the crime scene. From a legal perspective, this paved the way for a new precedent: missing persons cases can be reinvestigated even decades later, as long as the digital devices still retain recoverable data. The second pillar is electronic data. The recovery of Diane Whittaker's emails, text messages, and access logs prove that digital evidence is not limited by storage duration. The GBI recommends that investigative agencies expand their authority to collect historical data from service providers while strengthening legal capacity to authenticate old emails using the SHA-256 cryptographic hash verification method. The Whittaker case set a precedent allowing courts to accept recovered electronic evidence from hidden memory, provided there is a clear chain of custody and an independent verification report. This mechanism was subsequently incorporated into the Georgia Department of Justice's 2019 practice guidelines under the name Digital Evidence Continuity Rule. The third pillar, and the foundation, is modern forensic science. Through the application of Raman spectroscopy, stable isotope analysis, and touch DNA, investigators were able to prove that evidence from 2004 had been staged. The operational report states that the Whittaker case is proof of the ability to recover physical evidence after more than a decade, thanks to advances in forensic technology. Accordingly, the GBI recommends implementing a periodic re-examination program for long-stored evidence and prohibiting the destruction of samples even when a case has been closed. From a legal standpoint, the case also created two major impacts. First in the field of life insurance, and second in criminal case reopening procedures. In the insurance sector, a Georgia court for the first time clearly established the legal standard when it voided a contract due to pre-contract fraud, even though the insured had been legally declared dead many years earlier. The ruling in the Whittaker case forced 3 insurance companies in the state to review their identity verification policies for contract signatories. An additional decree passed at the end of 2018 requires that personal signatures must be authenticated in person before an authorized employee or via two-factor encrypted electronic confirmation to prevent similar identity fraud. The second impact concerns procedures for reopening criminal cases. Prior to 2016, state law did not specifically regulate the process for reviving cold cases based on technical evidence. The Whittaker case compelled judicial authorities to issue new guidelines. A case file may be reopened, even after the administrative retention period has expired, if just one of 3 conditions is met. 1 physical evidence re-examined, using new technology, 2 recovered digital data of investigative value, or 3, a cooperating witness providing corroborative testimony. This became an important precedent, enabling dozens of other missing persons cases in Georgia to be re-examined. The report also analyzes the ethical aspects of investigation. The use of old personal data requires balancing privacy rights with the public interest. The GBI recommends establishing a new oversight framework that requires court approval for each data recovery step and mandates retention of access logs in a secure system for a minimum of 10 years. Beyond legal impacts, the case has profoundly influenced professional training. The modern investigative triangle model, combining location data, digital evidence, and forensics, has become a mandatory component of the curriculum at the Georgia Cold Case Academy. Training materials use the Whittaker file as an example, complete with a timeline chart of evidence from 2004 to 2018. The conclusion of the analysis states, the combination of technology and rigorous legal process has proven that time is no longer a barrier to justice. The Whittaker case lays the foundation for 21 Stensary cold case investigation standards, where science, data, and law operate as a unified whole. On December 15, 2018, exactly 14 years after Mark Whittaker was reported missing, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation issued an official announcement closing the case. The case closing ceremony was held in the main auditorium of GBI headquarters in Atlanta, attended by representatives of the Department of Justice, the State Prosecutor's Office, investigators, forensic staff, and local media. From the podium, GBI Director Samuel Porter declared, The Whittaker case, file number GA, cold case, 2004, MW, is hereby changed from active investigations to closed case. All investigative, prosecutorial, and trial objectives have been completed. The 2004 missing persons case is confirmed as cold case solved. The announcement was printed on white paper, bearing Director Porter's signature and the red seal of the Georgia Department of Justice, becoming the final document in a nearly 900-page file. The summary section of the report clearly states, victim Mark Whittaker died from gunshot wounds at the Carr Creek area. Suspects Ryan Fletcher and Diane Whittaker have been tried and sentenced. The file is closed with the conclusion of premeditated murder with financial motive. In the digital archive, the case number was updated in the government system with the new status line, closed case. Conviction secured, cold case solved. A digital copy containing all physical evidence, forensic reports, GPS data, and trial transcripts was stored on GBI's internal servers, while a hard copy set was sent to the National Archive at Quantico, where exemplary solved cold cases of the United States are preserved. In the auditorium, as the large screen displayed a misty image of Lake Seminole, Detective Natalie Jones was invited on stage to receive a commendation for her outstanding contribution to the investigation. She said briefly, 14 years is half a lifetime, but the truth never loses its value over time. We only helped it be heard. At the end of the ceremony, Director Porter announced additional statistics. The Whittaker investigation mobilized a total of 212 personnel, 12,000 man-hours, and employed 9 new forensic technologies. It is the first cold case in the state resolved using location data, recovered emails, and environmental isotope analysis. Local media unanimously reported, GBI officially closes the Whittaker case. Cold case solved after 14 years. The Thomasville community received the news in quiet reflection. In the town square, Mark's photograph was displayed in a glass frame with the words 2004-2018, Justice Served. The victim's family held a small memorial by the shores of Lake Seminole, the place where he was first recorded as missing. Wreaths were set afloat on the water, drifting slowly into the mist, closing a long chapter of a story that had haunted the region for years. In the cold case unit office, the Whittaker file was carefully returned to cabinet number 12 among the solved cases. Detective Natalie Jones wrote the final entry in the investigation log. File complete, evidence airtight, sentence executed. Henceforth, the Mark Whittaker missing persons case is confirmed as cold case solved. She affixed a red label to the spine, signed it, and locked the cabinet. The office lights went out, leaving only the blue glow from the server screen illuminating the clear text. GBI case status, closed. Date, December 15, 2018. Case name, Whittaker, Mark. Cold case solved. Out there, Lake Seminole lay still, its surface like a mirror, but this time it held no more secrets. Only the belated peace of one man and the final period on a disappearance that had gripped Georgia for 14 long years. The story of the Mark Whittaker case is not merely a personal tragedy. It also reflects many values and challenges in modern American life, where justice, trust, and morality are constantly tested by greed and technology. From what seemed a hopeless disappearance in 2004, the truth emerged only thanks to technological advances, GPS data, DNA analysis, physical spectroscopy, and email recovery. In today's American society, where technology permeates every corner of life, the story reminds us that every action leaves a trace. Digital data, once considered cold and impersonal, became the strongest voice for justice. The Whittaker case is also a profound lesson about trust in marriage and finance. Diane and Ryan exploited love, trust, and the insurance system, a symbol of American security, to serve their personal greed. That betrayal not only killed a man, but shattered faith in relationships and family moral values. In a society where relationships are built on independence and trust, the story underscores that ethics cannot be replaced by convenience or material gain. The greatest lesson from the Whittaker case is that justice may come late, but it will come if people persevere and believe in the truth. 14 years of investigation and more than 12,000 hours of work reflect the uniquely American spirit of tenacity, refusing to accept silence in the face of lies. In today's world, that reminds us that regardless of the age of data or AI, honesty and personal responsibility remain the foundation that keeps a free and fair society standing. If this story touched you, and you believe justice always finds a way to speak, please hit subscribe so we can continue exploring cases decoded after years of silence. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video, where together we'll seek the truth behind other cold cases across America.